The atmosphere is heavy with the scent of bitter tea as Joe Hyan, the divine investigator, sits across from a visibly sweating Gong Mujin. Joe Hyan stares in stunned silence, his mind struggling to grasp the sheer absurdity of the report he just received. He breaks the silence, his voice trembling with disbelief as he asks if it is truly possible. Did he really sell the Sword Emperor's secret manual, the ultimate legacy of the greatest master in history, for a measly 2 gold coins? Gong Mujin can only offer a sheepish, embarrassed nod in confirmation. Joe Hyan slams his palm against his forehead, wondering aloud what kind of madness has seized them. He breaks into a hollow, frustrated laugh, remarking that if the world's most coveted treasure is being traded for pocket change, then in 10 years, even a stray dog on the street will be calling itself a Sword Emperor. Suddenly, Joe Hyan's gaze sharpens, turning his full attention toward Mujin. He demands to know what the boy was thinking when he committed such a sacrilegious act. Mujin awkwardly explains that while Yonho was perfectly blunt about it, the boy simply prefers cold, hard cash over complex martial techniques. In Yonho's eyes, this was a win-win situation for everyone involved. Joe Hyan falls into deep thought, muttering to himself that while the logic isn't technically flawed, the sheer audacity of it still makes his blood boil. This boy has set the entire martial world on fire with his actions, yet he speaks as if he's just settling a grocery bill. Finally, Joe Hyan sighs and asks where this legendary troublemaker is hiding now. The scene shifts to a much more peaceful setting, where Wai Yonho is currently dead to the world. He sleeps with the absolute serenity of a newborn, a smug, triumphant grin etched onto his face as he mutters in his sleep about finally finding paradise. His blissful rest is cut short by a rhythmic knocking at the door. Yonho groggily tells the visitor to come in, and Sealwa enters, balancing a tray of steaming food. She seems uncharacteristically nervous, her voice trembling slightly as she addresses him as young Master Y. Yonho's eyes snap open at the mention of food, his hunger instantly overriding his drowsiness. As Sealwa sits on the edge of his bed, the air between them grows thick with an awkward tension that Yonho completely fails to notice. Sealwa is clearly smitten, her face turning a deep shade of crimson, leaving Yonho wondering why on earth she's hovering so close. Without a word, she begins to hand-feed him, bringing the spoon to his lips. Yonho pauses, a brief moment of self-reflection crossing his mind as he realizes that being fed like a child might mean surrendering the last shred of his human dignity. However, the aroma of the meal wins out. He decides that this is the automatic dream meal he's always wanted. He prepares to take a bite, but the door is suddenly kicked open with a thunderous bang. Gong Mujin storms in without a hint of hesitation, calling out to see if the boy is awake, but he freezes mid-sentence. The sight of his precious disciple tenderly feeding Yonho sends him into a state of catatonic shock. Within seconds, shock turns to pure, unadulterated rage. Sealwa, terrified, jumps to her feet, gives a panicked bow to her master, and bolts out of the room like a rabbit. Yonho, his mouth still stuffed with food, watches her go and casually wonders if she had a sudden appointment. Mujin, however, looks ready to burst a blood vessel. The veins in his neck and face throb with fury as he draws his blade. Yonho is genuinely surprised, asking why a sword is suddenly involved, but Mujin doesn't listen. He charges forward, screaming that he will never hand over his disciple to a shameless bastard like him. A few minutes later, the storm has passed. Mujin is seen walking through the corridors, remarkably calm and quiet. The only difference is that his face is now a roadmap of bruises and swelling, having been thoroughly humbled by Yonho. The two are currently navigating the Martial Alliance headquarters, heading toward the military strategy hall. Yonho whistles a jaunty tune, looking completely refreshed, while a battered Mujin limps behind him, clutching his aching ribs. Yonho chides him, asking who told him to draw a sword and act like a hot-headed teenager at his age. When Mujin snaps at him to shut his mouth, Yonho reminds him that he was the one who was attacked, the true victim in this scenario. Mujin scoffs, insisting that he is the one who took the beating, but he eventually composes himself. He warns Yonho that the strategist they are about to meet is a titan of the martial world, a man so influential that even the alliance leader bows to his wisdom. He pleads with Yonho to show at least a modicum of respect and to keep his rude comments to himself. Yonho just waves him off, telling him he worries too much. They push open the massive doors, and Mujin immediately drops into a respectful bow, announcing that he has brought Wai Yonho as requested. Yonho, standing tall, doesn't even bother to nod, looking around the room with an expression of pure, unbridled boredom. Zhou Haiyan sits behind his desk, hiding his face behind an ornate fan before inviting them to sit. He acknowledges Yonho as the second son of Wai Zhonghan, noting that the alliance leader has a high opinion of his father's legendary sense of justice. Yonho doesn't skip a beat, retorting that it's exactly because of that justice that his family was always stuck eating cold leftovers at home. Mujin is mortified, his eyes wide with murderous intent as he tries to discreetly poke Yonho into being respectful. Yonho just yelps, asking why he keeps being poked like a doll. Mujin hisses at the brat to show some respect, but Zhou Haiyan just chuckles, finding the boy's honesty refreshing. He invites them to sit for tea, and Yonho finds himself face to face with the strategist. Yonho's gaze is cold and indifferent. He clearly sees this entire meeting as a distraction from his nap. Zhou Haiyan leans in, noting that based on Yonho's expression, it seems the boy has taken a personal dislike to him. Yonho confirms this instantly, admitting that it's true. Mujin is so blindsided by the lack of filter that he sprays his tea across the table in a spectacular mess, wondering if this kid is incredibly brave or just pathologically shameless. When Zhou Haiyan asks for a reason, Yonho explains that the strategist looks far too perfect. He elaborates, saying that Zhou Haiyan looks too reliable, with his flawless skin, immaculate white hair, and that kindly, grandfatherly beard. Zhou Haiyan asks if he's simply jealous of his good looks, but Yonho's expression turns serious. He calls it suspicion. He argues that if a con artist actually looked like a criminal, no one would ever be fooled. He leans forward with a sharp, knowing smile, stating that the most dangerous swindlers are the ones who look as trustworthy as Zhou Haiyan. Zhou Haiyan falls silent, studying the boy before slowly closing his fan. He asks who gave him such a cynical worldview, and Yonho credits his master. While Mujin sits there with his jaw hanging open, Zhou Haiyan asks if this master was perhaps a bitter, ugly man. Yonho flatly denies it, describing his master as incredibly handsome, refined, and far more elegant than the man sitting before him. He recalls a flashback where his master warned him that the more reliable and handsome someone appears, much like the master himself, the more dangerous they truly are. This is especially true for old men, as a polished exterior often hides a very different interior. Zhou Haiyan realizes he has no rebuttal if the boy's master used his own good looks as a warning. He clears his throat, deciding it's time to move on to business. He points out that Yonho's recent antics have trashed the alliance's reputation with the authorities and that the cost of fixing the outer wall he destroyed is astronomical. He demands to know how Yonho plans to settle the debt. To his surprise, Yonho smiles, stating he was just about to bring that up. He leans in and proposes a deal that would change everything. The scene transitions to the bustling square in front of the Martial Alliance's main gate, where a massive, rowdy crowd has gathered. A towering banner flies in the wind, announcing the sale of the Sword Emperor's greatest treasure, with its authenticity officially guaranteed by the Martial Alliance itself. A temporary branch of the Galactic Bank has even been set up on site to handle the influx of money. Chung stands before the masses, shouting that anyone in need of a loan to secure the manual should step forward. The crowd is a mix of excitement and deep suspicion. Some whisper that this has to be the ballsiest scam in history, happening right under the Alliance's nose. When a soldier announces the price is a mere 3 gold niangs, people lose their minds. Some complain it's a fortune they'll never see, while a rat-faced man in the crowd is convinced it's a trap. However, his confidence wavers when he sees 2 legendary masters, the divine piercer Sim Wu, and the formless fist Yang Jian, standing there with transfer certificates. The crowd watches in awe as these high-level masters begin diligently copying the manual onto scrolls. The rat-faced man realizes that if warriors of their caliber are transcribing the text for 3 Niangs, the manual must be the real deal. Chaos erupts instantly as hundreds of people surge forward, screaming for a copy and begging for loans. Chung barks orders, directing the debtors to the left and the cash buyers to the right. When a skeptic asks if this is truly authentic, Chung retorts that he wouldn't be stupid enough to risk his life by running a fake scheme in the heart of the Martial Alliance. Just as the crowd reaches a fever pitch, a booming voice commands everyone to halt. Song Mun, a high-ranking Taoist of the Wudong sect, strides into the square with an air of righteous indignation. He accuses the soldiers of running a fraudulent scheme and declares that he cannot stand by while liars corrupt the common folk. He vows to take immediate action to shut the operation down. But before he can move, Yonho suddenly materializes directly behind him. He asks the priest exactly what he thinks he's doing. Songmun freezes, his heart skipping a beat as he realizes he didn't feel the boy's presence at all. When Songmun stammers that the manual is a fake, Yonho lets out an annoyed, theatrical sigh. He shouts to the entire square that this is an official, sacred venture authorized by the Martial Alliance of Justice. He points a defiant finger at the priest, demanding to know who he thinks he is to disrupt their work, ending his tirade by calling the venerable master a big-nosed Taoist in front of the entire stunned crowd. Songmun stares at Yonho, who is currently pointing a finger directly at him. Deep down, Songmun is unsettled. He can't sense even a hint of a presence coming from the boy. He wonders who this person could possibly be. Beyond that, he is struck by the boy's face, noting that in all his life, he has never seen a physiological expression quite as grumpy as this one. Yonho turns his attention to 2 nearby soldiers and tells them to forget about the tension and just bring it over. The soldiers immediately scramble to obey, returning with a reclining lounge chair and a warm blanket. Yonho is being treated like absolute royalty. As he settles into the chair, he remarks that speaking while standing is far too exhausting, even asking the Taoist master if he'd like to lie down as well. Songmun isn't amused and demands to know if Yonho is truly their master. He accuses him of trying to deceive the people by selling fraudulent secret techniques of the Sword Emperor. Yonho observes him closely before asking if the master has just emerged from isolated meditation. He scoffs, noting that the entire world knows the secret technique originated from Nazan, yet it seems only the big-nosed Taoist master is out of the loop. A murmur rises from the crowd as onlookers whisper that the master must have spent so much time cultivating the way that he has completely lost touch with reality. Yonho continues, telling him quite frankly that he is being incredibly naive. He points out the logic. If he were selling something fake, would he really be doing it right here, in the front courtyard of the Justice Alliance? Songmun pauses, reflecting on those words, and admits to himself that the boy actually makes a fair point. Yonho then pulls out the manual and tells him that a picture is worth 1,000 words. He invites Songmun to see for himself if he doesn't believe it, though he clarifies he can only view the introduction. With a lightning-fast movement, Songmun snatches the manual, thinking that it had better not be a fake, or he'll be the end of the boy. He begins flipping through the pages until he stops at one in particular. As he reads, his eyes widen in absolute shock. The manual begins to glow, and Songmun realizes this is the very clue he needs to break through the bottleneck that has held him back for so long. He thinks it's splendid, desperately wanting just a little more. But at the climax of his realization, Yonho grabs the manual away, telling him he's seen enough. He reminds the master that others have paid to see it, so it can't be free. Seeing that it's the real deal, Songmun demands to know the price, asking if it's really 3 gold niangs. Yonho clarifies that such a price is for individuals. For sects, they must negotiate separately over at the side. He then leans in and whispers into Songmun's ear that, for his information, the Shaolin sect purchased it for 300 gold niangs. Songmun is staggered, asking if they really paid that much. Yonho continues whispering, revealing that they didn't even pay in cash. They signed a promissory note and are now deeply in debt. He adds that since they are the Shaolin, he trusts them. He then casually mentions hearing that the Winter Flower Sword Demon Uncle also sent a messenger to Manhwa. Songmun is gripped by internal panic. If the Shaolin and even Manhwa are acquiring the Sword Emperor's treasure, how could the Wudong, a sword sect, possibly stay out of it? As Chung pulls out a contract, Songmun declares he will sign the note. He asserts his identity as a Wudong elder as a guarantee and demands the manual immediately. Yonho corrects him, explaining they aren't giving him the manual, but rather letting him copy it. Songmun shouts that it doesn't matter and demands a brush right away. Soon, even a prestigious Wudong elder is on his knees, frantically copying the manual while the crowd watches in stunned silence. People begin to shout that if a Wudong elder is copying like a madman, it must be real. As sunset arrives, more people rush forward, begging the soldiers to take their money so they can copy it too. Yonho watches the chaos from his chair, reading the manual himself. As he flips through the pages, he thinks it's strange. He wonders why neither Master Gongryong nor Songmun suspects anything. To him, the content doesn't seem sufficient to be called the Sword Emperor's manual. Furthermore, he senses a strange malice within it. He wonders just how strong his master truly was. Was he even greater than the Sword Emperor? Suddenly, a shiver runs down his spine and he jumps up. He feels incredibly uneasy, describing the sensation as the guilt of not cleaning up after doing something very wrong. However, the feeling is fleeting. He soon calms down, settles back into his chair, and decides he's just going to sleep. The scene shifts to his family as they step down from a carriage. His brother asks Jang Il about Yonho's whereabouts, and Jang Il responds that by now, he should have arrived in Luoyang. Yonho's brother tells their father they should head straight to Luoyang, and the father agrees they can't waste any more time. Yonho's mother warns them that if Yonho isn't there this time, they will all pay the price. The father places a hand on his son's shoulder, advising him that once he marries, he should never participate in martial tournaments or even leave the house. He stresses that peace at home is the most important thing. The leader of the Beggars' Union then chimes in with more information. When Yonho passed through the Xinjiang branch, he was reportedly with a young woman. Jean Yeren of the sect grabs him by the shoulder, squeezing hard as she demands to know if young Master Y was really with another woman. The man cries out in pain, but Jean Yeren persists, claiming that if something big happened, there would be many injured people. She insists a doctor must be present and declares she is going along. Yonho's brother and father are surprised, but his mother says that if it is the lady's wish, she won't stop her. As they continue their journey in the carriage, the brother whispers that he's coming for him. The mother thinks to herself, surprised yet secretly pleased, that Yonho was with yet another woman. Meanwhile, the father grumbles that the brat is probably lounging around somewhere and will never change. Back with Yonho, he is cleaning his ear with his pinky, asking for clarification on being an instructor. He is drinking tea with strategist Hyan, who confirms the plan. Yonho is incredulous, wondering if the old man has lost his mind. He can't believe a lazy person like himself is being asked to teach. He tells the strategist he is far too young and, above all, far too lazy for the job. Hyan counters that age is no barrier to learning and questions how someone so lazy could have accumulated such immense martial prowess. Yonho thinks back to his master, remembering the constant shouting to get up, dodge, and the threats of death. He tells Hyan there were special circumstances. Hyan seizes on this, saying that's exactly why they want him to share those special circumstances. Yonho warns him he'll regret it, but Hyan remains firm. When Yonho asks if he can just refuse because it's too much work, Hyan smiles. He says he wouldn't force him, but he reminds Yonho that complaints about his manual business at the gate are piling up. He mentions he's been using his authority to protect him, but as a mere human, his mind could change. Yonho curses the old man in his head, realizing the business is too lucrative to give up, but he doesn't want to be under the old man's thumb either. Finally, He slams his hand on the table and agrees, but only on the condition they sign a contract. Hyan is surprised. Yonho stipulates that no matter what happens during the lessons, he assumes zero responsibility. Furthermore, the tuition will be 1 gold niang per student. He thinks to himself that no one would ever accept such a crazy contract. To his horror, Hyan smiles and says it doesn't sound difficult at all. Yonho slams his head against the table, realizing he's doomed while Hyan laughs. Yonho laments his difficult life, frustrated that he hasn't even had time to rest before being forced to work again. He decides that if he's going to do this, he'll make sure they fire him by turning the whole thing into chaos. Hyan watches him, thinking that he is several steps ahead of the boy and intends to squeeze every last drop of talent out of him. And so, the great clash of their conflicting dreams begins. The scene moves to the leader of the Martial Arts Justice Alliance, Extreme Fist Sima Chance. He asks Mujin if everything he's heard is true. As they share tea, Mujin confirms it. Chance is shocked by the boy's age, and Mujin reaffirms the facts. Chance knows Mujin isn't a man to tell pointless lies, but he still finds it hard to believe. He asks if it's true that the boy uses an unknown martial art whose level is impossible to even estimate. Mujin admits it's hard to believe, but it is the truth. Chance asks if Mujin traded blows with him, and when Mujin says yes, Chance asks if even at his level, he couldn't see the boy's limit. Mujin confirms this. Chance points out that Mujin has measured strength against the greatest swordsmen at the peak of Manhwa and those who dominate the world, yet he still holds this evaluation. Mujin remains silent for a moment before admitting honestly that while he has crossed swords even with the immortal Sword Elder, he never felt a gap as vast as the one he felt when facing that boy. He imagines Yonho as a towering giant compared to his own small stature. Chance's expression darkens. He wonders if the boy is truly above the immortal sword, joking to himself if the kid ate an entire field of celestial ginseng. He stands up abruptly, clenching his fist. As Mujin watches, Chance releases his immense power. Internally, Chance is reeling at the thought of a talent emerging at such a young age that surpasses the immortal sword. He looks at Mujin and asks, compared to himself, how the boy would fare. His heart, he realizes, can barely contain his excitement. Mujin watches in silence for a moment before admitting that he wouldn't even dare to make a comparison. Upon hearing Mujin's words, Chance bursts into a loud, boisterous laugh. He takes a seat and asks if Mujin is truly unable to say he is superior, even if it were just a hollow compliment. With a booming laugh, Chance remarks that a truly remarkable fellow has appeared in the Guangdong clan. Just then, Hyan enters the room. Chance turns to the strategist and asks why he looks so pleased, immediately following up with a question about what happened with Yonho. Hyan explains that in exchange for letting the boy manage his own business, Yonho agreed to serve as an instructor at the Hidden Dragon Martial Pavilion for a while. Chance is skeptical, noting that the boy doesn't look much older than the academy cadets. He points out that why Sanho only graduated recently, yet Hyan is already installing Yonho as an instructor. Hyan clarifies that Yonho's youth is exactly why this move matters. He notes that the boy doesn't seem to enjoy meeting new people, but since Yonho is a pillar who will eventually lead the Jianghu, it is vital for him to build ties with those of his own age. Furthermore, Hyan argues that they can't exactly ask a boy who is stronger than the actual instructors to enroll as a mere cadet. He adds that if the other youths feel stimulated by seeing Yonho and grow even a little bit stronger, it won't be a bad deal for the clan. The scene shifts to the training grounds of the Hidden Dragon Martial Pavilion. Among the students is Ian Hyo, who wonders to himself why he feels so anxious. He reminds himself that he overcame a selection process with a 100-to-1 ratio just to join the class guaranteed by the divine strategist. In that moment, Peng Hyong approaches, calling him brother and noting that he doesn't look well. He asks if something happened during the night. Ian Hyo responds that nothing happened in particular, but he feels strangely restless and uneasy, perhaps just under the weather. He then asks Hyong if he has finished preparing for class. Hyong scoffs, asking how he is supposed to prepare when he doesn't even know the subject matter or who the instructor is. He finds the total lack of information frustrating. Another student recognizes the pair and points them out as the saber dragon and the fist dragon. Ian Hyo sighs, noting that the instructor hasn't even shown up yet. Suddenly, Hyung notices something and asks his brother if he sees what is sitting in the middle of the field. Ian Hyo turns and spots a bed complete with a blanket. He begins to sweat, questioning if it could really be what he thinks it is. He tells himself it's impossible, yet he knows deep down it must be him. Another student, Moyong Donghak, the young lord of the Moyong clan, arrives and greets Ian Hyo, expressing his hope that they can work well together now that they have both passed. Ian Hyo gives a brief, distracted social response. Donghak then approaches the bed and asks what a piece of furniture is doing on a training field. Just as Hyung is about to explain, Ian Hyo stops him. He whispers that they shouldn't be the only ones to suffer and that it's better not to say anything about the bed. Hyung agrees it's a good idea but suggests they should perhaps run away while they still have the chance. Ian Hyo refuses, reminding him that Yonho is the monster who killed the Phantom Blade Demon twins as if it were nothing. He believes that if they can manage to learn from him, it is a golden opportunity to grow stronger. Right then, a demoralized Yonho arrives and heads straight for his bed. He turns toward the students with a terrifying expression and mutters that he really doesn't want to do this. Ian Hyo and Hyung realize with dread that the man has finally arrived. As sunset approaches, Hyun stands atop a tower, reflecting on how the massacre in Nazen has been resolved and how the Jonghu is finally at peace for the first time in a long while. As he looks down at the training field, he muses that it would be even quieter if not for the chaos below. On the field, the students are shouting at each other to keep the line, complaining that the sun is setting before they have even started. Suk Muncho, the chief instructor of the martial pavilion, approaches Hyun and offers his greetings. Hyun welcomes him and asks if everything is well at the pavilion, specifically inquiring about Yonho. He wonders if the talented boy is conducting some kind of revolutionary training. Muncho sighs and tells the strategist that he came specifically because of that problem, suggesting that Hyun should see the situation with his own eyes. Down on the training ground, the boys have formed various groups and are simply joking around and playing games instead of practicing. Hyun is horrified, screaming out to ask what on earth they are doing killing time in a place of education. He demands to know how things reached this point and where the instructor has been. Muncho simply points toward the bed where Yonho is fast asleep. Yonho is sleeping peacefully, leaving Hyun in a state of shock. From the tower, Hyun bellows at the young hero, asking what the hell he thinks he is doing. Yonho wakes up, drooling, and looks around in confusion. The scene shifts indoors where a furious Hyun gulps down his tea in one breath. Yonho casually remarks on the heat and jokes that Hyun could make a fortune if he opened a tea shop right now. Hyun nearly loses his temper, reminding Yonho that he promised to offer the best possible teaching. He demands to know why the boy was sleeping in the middle of the field instead of giving a lesson. Yonho counters that he is offering a lesson that goes beyond the best. It is the supreme lesson. He claims there is no better teaching in the world than self-study, noting that even Master Bodhidharma and the legendary Zhang Sanfeng practiced wall-gazing meditation. Hyun screams back that such a feat was only possible because they were rare geniuses, whereas ordinary people need a master to guide them. Yonho retorts that none of their disciples ever surpassed the masters. He asks if there is anyone in the Wudong sect who has actually surpassed the legendary Zhang Sanfeng. Hyun is left speechless. Yonho continues, arguing that if people are learning but no one is improving upon the source, then something is wrong with the system of having a master. He explains that to teach everyone properly, he would need to know each of their specific martial arts. He points out that since he has never used a saber, he wouldn't know how to teach Peng Hyong, asking sarcastically if he should go out and learn the 5-tiger saber style just to teach one student. Frustrated, Hyun explains that he never asked Yonho to deepen their individual martial arts, but rather to establish a general concept of martial skills, which is the pavilion's policy. Yonho nods, saying he understands, but then pulls out his contract. He points out the clause stating that no one is to interfere with his teaching methods, so he will do as he pleases. Hyan realizes he is trapped by the agreement and asks why they even bothered discussing it if Yonho was just going to throw the contract in his face. Yonho simply says he was curious about the strategist's esteemed opinion, though after hearing it, he doesn't find it particularly profound. Yonho stands up to leave, noting that class time is over. He casually asks for his meal to be sent to his quarters. Hyan is left seething. The following day, Yonho is back in his bed, this time outdoors. Seowa is feeding him by hand, and Yonho remarks on how good it is, noting that while his room is nice, rolling around in a bed in the fresh air has its own charm. He admits he should have come out sooner if he knew it would be this nice. Muzin then arrives, using the elite indestructible diamond body technique just to deliver more sweets to Yonho, serving him as if he were a deity. The other students are stunned. One of them notes that using the world's best movement technique for a simple candy delivery is insane. A student named Jungjul snaps, declaring that he has to say something. Ian Hyo tries to discourage him, asking what he hopes to gain by complaining, but Jungjul doesn't care. He rants that this has been going on for days. He marches toward Yonho, shouting that he didn't come there to play. He demands that if Yonho won't teach, he should at least let them transfer to another class. Thumping his fist against his chest, Jungjul yells at the instructor, telling him he has gone too far. He claims he only endured it because the divine strategist vouched for him, but if Yonho took the job, he needs to act like an instructor. Ian Hyo tries to hold him back, but Jungjul continues to scream, demanding either a real lesson or a refund of the tuition so they can leave. He points a finger at Yonho and tells him to make a decision. Yonho looks at them and makes a terrifying face that sends a chill through the cadets. He asks if what they are saying is that they actually want to have a lesson with him. Jungjul asks if there is something wrong with that. Yonho says no, but finds it shocking that they would want to spend time and effort on a lesson. Ian Hyo thinks to himself that this is, after all, a martial pavilion. Yonho asks if anyone else feels the same way, and another student agrees that a lesson would be better than nothing. Yonho stands up and begins to stretch, muttering that while it's unbelievable, he has to respect human diversity. He remarks that he never knew there were people who would pay just to suffer. He reaches down to pick something up from the ground, explaining that since he has never taught anyone before, he can only teach the way he himself was taught. He asks if they are okay with that. Jungjul tells him that anything is fine, urging him to just start. As Yonho charges his strike, he tells them that since they gave the okay, they should be ready. He flicks a small stone with incredible force, hitting Jungjul square in the forehead and sending him crashing to the ground. The other cadets are horrified, realizing he just threw a rock at a student. Yonho picks up more stones and explains that the very first lesson his master, Baekmuon, taught him was that a stone hurts much more than a punch. Referring to the limitless stone evasion training, Yonho readies his next shot and warns them to dodge if they don't want to get hurt. With that, the lesson officially begins. The other disciples stand frozen in shock as they witness Jungjul lying flat on the ground, a stone having struck him directly in the head. Watching the scene unfold, Ian mutters to himself that Jungjul really should have picked his opponents more carefully. Meanwhile, Yonho looks down at the fallen martial artist and casually asks if it hurts a lot, adding that he really should have dodged it. The rest of the disciples whisper among themselves, questioning who could possibly dodge a strike like that, calling Yonho an absolute lunatic. Yonho continues his lecture, admitting he feels a bit sorry, but since Jungjul claimed he wanted to learn, Yonho had no choice. He explains that his master used to tell him that whatever doesn't kill you only makes you stronger. As he bends down to pick up another pebble, Yonho mentions that his master also taught him never to look away just because it hurts. He explains that when enemies hear your groans, they won't feel sorry for you. They will simply look for an opening. He directly asks Jungjul if he understands the meaning behind those words. Then, with a blindingly fast and incredibly powerful flick, he strikes Jungjul in the head with the pebble yet again. This second impact knocks Jungjul out completely cold, leaving two massive lumps swelling on his head. The surrounding disciples are completely stunned, whispering in sheer disbelief that he just knocked out Wangbo Jungjul with nothing but 2 thrown stones. They realized that while an instructor recommended by the divine strategist should have been some kind of brilliant tactician or mastermind, this guy is nothing short of a pure monster. Turning his attention to the rest of the group, Yonho suddenly remembers something and asks if the rest of them didn't also agree to this training. The remaining disciples gasp in horror, utterly terrified of suffering the exact same brutal treatment as Jungjul. Meanwhile, Yonho begins to spin his arm in rapid, terrifying circles, noting that while the method might be a bit rough, the results are absolutely guaranteed, so they should all give it a shot. He adds that it was honestly getting embarrassing for him to just lounge around, drawing a salary with absolutely nothing to show for it. Right at that moment, someone tentatively raises his hand to ask for permission to speak, and it turns out to be Ian. Yonho recognizes him immediately, remarking that it has been a while and asking what the matter is. Sweating profusely, Ian nervously asks if it is at all possible to cancel their enrollment. The scene shifts over to the head of the royal inspectors, Wang Ya, who reacts with pure astonishment upon hearing that this specific guy has entered Luoyang. Wang Ya is the very official who previously bestowed the Royal Inspector Golden Sword upon Yonho. His subordinate confirms the news to Wang Ya, explaining that the great administrator of Luoyang has explicitly requested a background check because someone carrying the Royal Inspector Golden Sword has entered the city, and they want the Bureau to verify his identity. Wang Ya states that the boy is the one he personally gave the Golden Sword to, instructing his subordinate to tell the great administrator of Luoyang to treat him with the utmost respect befitting a royal inspector. However, to himself, Wang Ya thinks that just picturing Yonho lounging around and exploiting his reputation already makes him physically sick. He quickly tries to correct his mindset, reminding himself that he shouldn't think this way, since the boy did render genuine meritorious service by bringing in even the great administrator of Wuhan. But the subordinate quickly cuts back in, reporting that if that person is truly a royal inspector, a formal request for financial compensation has just been filed against them. A stunned Wang Ya demands to know what kind of compensation he is talking about. His subordinate goes on to explain that this so-called royal inspector completely destroyed Luoyang's main city gate, smashed half the buildings along the main road, and to top it all off, even blew up the outer wall of the Orthodox Murim Alliance. A completely shocked Wang Ya gasps, questioning how he could have blown up the city gate, wondering how a single individual could possibly destroy a gate specifically designed to block foreign invaders. Yet, the subordinate is far from finished, adding that because Yonho drew the golden sword and loudly shouted Iosa Chuldu right in front of the wall guards, official wanted sketches of the royal inspector are now circulating through every single government office. Since his face has been completely exposed, the local authorities have strongly suggested retrieving the royal token and appointing a brand new royal inspector. Flying into a furious rage, Wang Ya fumes silently to himself, realizing that the damn brat basically went around bragging about being a secret royal inspector right in the dead center of Luoyang. Suddenly, Wang Ya snaps, leaping out of his chair and screaming at the top of his lungs for Mun Yuan to be called right this instant. His subordinate nervously reminds him that it is currently the 3rd watch of the night, questioning if they should really summon him at such a late hour. Wang Ya roars back that he does not care what time it is, demanding they bring him in immediately. Walking away in an absolute fury, he mutters to himself that the brat is going to be the absolute death of him. He recalls giving him that token specifically to investigate matters in total secrecy, yet the boy went ahead and shouted Iosa Chuldu for the whole world to hear. He grumbles that he cannot simply and shamelessly take back a token he already gave, but if he leaves the boy to his own devices, he is going to smash the entire world to pieces in the name of the royal inspectors. Stepping out into the dead of night, he shouts into the darkness, asking if anyone is there and ordering them to prepare his carriage, declaring his intention to seek an urgent audience with His Majesty at dawn. The very next day, the brutal training regime resumes with Yonho, who wastes no time in pelting the boys with heavy stones. Ian desperately manages to duck and weave, successfully dodging several dangerous strikes as the pebbles was just barely above his head. Terribly alarmed, Ian thinks to himself that a thrown stone possessing enough destructive power to blow up an outer wall is insane enough, but he wonders why the stones seem to be getting larger with each passing day. He tells himself that a human being must absolutely never get hit by a weapon like that. Looking over at the other disciples who are already lying completely unconscious on the ground, he laments internally that the one thing that must never happen has already occurred multiple times. As he slowly rotates his shoulder, Yonho calls out to them, expressing his wish that they would all just step a bit closer. He complains that they are backing away so far that he is forced to put extra, unnecessary force behind every single throw, which is starting to make him angry for no reason at all. Terribly panicked, Ian yells back, begging him to wait a minute and demanding to know what kind of training this is supposed to be. Yonho deadpans in response, asking if it isn't completely obvious that they are dodging stones. Ian presses him further, asking how on earth this could ever be helpful to them. Yonho retorts that it actually is helpful, explaining that this happens to be the only method he knows. He reminds Ian that he originally told them to just engage in self-study, but they were the ones who insisted on receiving a proper lesson. Stammering nervously, Ian asks just one more question, inquiring if the instructor himself also underwent this exact same training. Yonho casually confirms that he did. Trembling, Ian asks how long he had to endure it. Yonho replies that all he can remember is getting beaten absolutely half to death for about 2 entire years. Ian is completely paralyzed with shock upon hearing the duration of 2 years. Yonho reassures them, suggesting that they will surely get much better after getting hit for just a month or 2. He declares that this is all for their own good anyway, and without missing a beat, he unleashes another rapid volley of stones directly toward Ian. As Ian desperately scrambles to dodge them, he realizes with bitter certainty that this must be the exact reason why their tuition fees were strictly non-refundable. The focus of the story then shifts to the office of the strategist, where a frantic subordinate bangs on the door, begging him to please open up. Inside, Hyan demands to know what the matter is. The subordinate reveals that he is holding a massive pile of cancellation requests and formal petitions submitted by the students. Hyan's face twists into a hideous expression the moment he thinks about Yonho. He then asks if that troublesome Yonho fellow is still doing absolutely nothing at all. His subordinate deeply sighs, replying that if only that were the case, things would be wonderful. He explains that because the disciples foolishly asked him to train them, Yonho has officially commenced his instructions. Stunned, Hyan stammers, asking if that is the case, and wonders if it shouldn't actually count as good news. The subordinate quickly clarifies the horrifying reality, explaining that Yonho gathered all the students in the training grounds under the guise of an official lesson and has been relentlessly pelting them with heavy stones, telling them they must dodge. Hyan tries to rationalize it, noting that while it is a rather traditional and harsh method of training, it should still technically fall within the boundaries of legitimate instruction. However, his expression instantly turns completely grim as the subordinate delivers the final casualty report: 20 severe cases of bruising and 12 distinct bone fractures, leaving the infirmary completely packed to maximum capacity. On top of that, the disciples are now openly threatening to contact their influential families to stage a massive, coordinated protest. An angry Hyan demands to know what that Yonho brat has to say in his own defense. His subordinate answers that the boy is simply grumbling about how the kids these days are far too soft, claiming that he himself was completely fine even after getting hit hundreds of times. Hearing this, Hyan barks in order to just change the students' classes immediately to get them away from him. But the subordinate nervously reveals that Instructor Yonho is flatly refusing to stamp his official seal of approval. He explains that Yonho claims he receives 1 gold niang per head, and he stands to lose a significant amount of money if the kids drop out of his class. Infuriated, Hyan tightly clenches his fist, the veins visibly popping out on his skin as he growls, demanding to know if there is truly no way to stop this madness. In his mounting rage, he roars out the name of Yonho's father, Jonghan, shouting to know exactly where that man is right now. He fumes that Jonghan's own son is causing such a monumental, catastrophic mess, yet that carefree man is nowhere to be found. Right at that chaotic moment, another subordinate bursts into the room. Hyan snaps at him, telling him to come back later because he is incredibly busy. But the messenger insists, stating that the matter is urgent and concerns the very task he was previously instructed to monitor. Glaring, Hyan demands to know what it is, telling him to spit it out. The subordinate quickly reports that right now, out at the primary fortress gate, Jonghan's entire party from the Guangdong clan has just arrived. Hearing this, Hyan instantly whips around in a furious state. With supersonic speed, he blurs out of the room and charges straight toward the gates, leaving his bewildered subordinate to remark to himself that things are about to become absolutely chaotic. Standing directly in front of the massive main gate are Yonho's father, mother, and brother. Looking around at the scenery, Jonghan remarks that it has been a truly long time since he last visited the Orthodox Murim Alliance, though he wonders out loud what is up with all the temporary tents set up everywhere. Hearing this, his wife completely loses her temper and screams at him, demanding to know if that is really what matters at a time like this. She castigates him, shouting that he truly is the exact type of reckless man who would heartlessly abandon his own wife and child just to gallivant off on a foolish martial arts journey. Looking thoroughly defeated, Jonghan meekly apologizes, admitting to Senga that he has indeed committed a deadly, unforgivable sin. Meanwhile, Yonho's brother watches a guard strictly inspecting everyone's identification documents. He notes that the Alliance's identity checks appear to be incredibly thorough, wondering if something major happened recently, as they might end up being delayed much longer than originally expected. His father confidently steps forward, telling them not to worry at all. He proudly asks who they think he is, boasting that the moment he reveals his true identity, the strategist himself will come running out completely barefoot just to greet him. He tells them to just watch closely, as he intends to use this golden opportunity to clearly demonstrate the immense prestige of the legendary Sword of Justice. A moment later, however, his proud expression completely deflates. As he trudges back to his family, his wife sharply asks why he is coming right back and what the guards actually said to him. He dejectedly repeats the exact words of the guard, who told him that while they fully understand he is the famed Sword of Justice, he is still strictly required to follow the standard visitation procedures and wait in line without any exception whatsoever. Trying to comfort him, his son softly mutters that such things can happen, father. His wife, however, outright screams at him, mocking his so-called prestige, yelling about what an amazing prestige it turned out to be, calling it nothing but absolute dog poop prestige. Sighing heavily to himself, Jonghan reflects on the past, remembering a time when the mere mention of the name Sword of Justice alone was enough to grant him immediate passage absolutely anywhere, lamenting how incredibly fleeting time truly is. Right at that exact instant, the massive fortress gates violently swing open. Hyan roars Jonghan's name at the top of his lungs, sprinting wildly directly toward him. An ecstatic Jonghan beams with joy, turning to his family to point out that he really did come out running to meet them after all. Deep down, he thinks to himself that he always believed in his old friend Hyan. He raises his hands to greet him, exclaiming that it has been a very long time, elder strategist. Hyan continues to barrel forward at absolute maximum speed, fiercely screaming his name. Jonghan happily calls back, fully convinced that everything is perfect, swearing to himself that he will work himself to the bone to serve Murim justice and the glorious Orthodox Murim Alliance. But in reality, Hyan is not happy in the slightest. He forcefully winds up his fist, roars out a furious order to die, and plants a massive punch directly into the middle of Jonghan's face. Everyone present, including a completely blindsided Jonghan, freezes in absolute, paralyzing shock. Hyan aggressively discharges every single drop of his built-up rage over Yonho's chaotic antics directly into the face of his unfortunate father, Jonghan. The chapter opens under the striking moonlight, featuring a mysterious father and son who are the very masterminds behind leaking the secret manual Yonho is currently selling. The father questions how martial arts texts could possibly be sold outside the orthodox Murim alliance. His son confirms that it is indeed true, explaining that Yonho of Guangdong's Y clan is allowing peak-level martial arts to spread everywhere, admitting that this unexpected move was entirely outside his calculations. Unleashing an overwhelming aura, the furious father curses Yonho, noting that it feels as if the boy was sent by the heavens themselves just to stand in their way. In a fit of rage, he stomps his foot, channeling his immense inner power into the ground. Nearby rose petals tear away from their stems one by one, swirling through the air to encircle them. Watching this terrifying display, the shocked son recognizes it internally as the psychic levitation of the peak realm, marveling that his father's martial arts have already reached the heavens. Dropping to his knees, he bows deeply and offers his congratulations. The father dismisses the minor setback, declaring that while it is no major issue, they must hasten their plans. He orders his son to command their operatives spread across the lands to raise the flags of 1,000 swords. The son vows to make preparations immediately, but the father stops him, adding one more thing. He acknowledges that while caution is his son's gift, he sometimes lacks the determination to push ahead. He reminds him that a warrior must never hesitate to swing once the sword is drawn. Confused, the son asks what he means. The father's response is cold and absolute, ordering him to eliminate Yonho. Accepting the direct order, the son complies, promising to do as commanded, as the father proclaims that it is now time for Yonho to pay for his sins to the world. The scene then shifts to Yonho's father, who gets punched right in the face by Hyan in front of everyone. Stunned by the unbelievable sight, Yonho's brother, Sanho, wonders to himself if this is even reality. Yonho's mother immediately steps in front of her husband, confronting Hyan and asking what on earth he thinks he is doing, shouting that even if her husband is a toothless tiger, this is going way too far. Trembling, Yonho's father chimes in, asking the strategist what has gotten into him. Furious, Hyan grabs him by the collar, calling him a damn idiot. He berates him, shouting that he told him to take care of his own family before dealing with outside affairs, demanding to know what he has been doing out in the world to leave his own household in such an absolute mess. Hearing the strategist's words, Yonho's mother suddenly changes her tune, agreeing that Hyan actually has a point and telling him to continue. Shocked, her son protests, telling his mother that she cannot take his side. Completely oblivious, Yonho's father asks what the strategist even means. Hyan explodes, roaring if he has any clue what his second son is currently doing. Hearing this, Yonho's father immediately thinks of Yonho, muttering to himself that the brat clearly hasn't changed. He tries to calm Hyan down, stammering for him to relax because there are people watching them. Hyan turns around and notices the massive crowd that has gathered to watch the drama unfold. Clearing his throat, he tells the family to head inside. Yonho's brother turns to their father and remarks that this is actually a relief, noting that they won't have to wait thanks to him. As a single tear rolls down his cheek, the father laments internally that this is definitely not how you comfort someone, Sanho. Meanwhile, the scene shifts to the training grounds, where Yonho is relentlessly pelting his disciples with rocks. Watching his peers get absolutely blasted away, Ian wonders in disbelief how anyone could even survive a hit that sends them flying that far. But Ian has no time to worry about the others. A rock flies straight toward his face. Channeling his Heavenly King Heavenly World technique, he shatters the stone with his fist, determined to give it a shot. Suddenly, another rock barrels toward him. He prepares to smash it as well, but as it approaches at an unbelievable speed, he changes his mind at the absolute last second and decides to dodge it instead, thinking absolutely not. He wonders how a mere rock can be thrown that fast. To avoid the projectile, He bends his upper body backward, but the extreme movement catches up to him as his back makes a strange popping sound, sending a sharp wave of pain through him. Ian collapses to his knees in sheer agony. Sitting comfortably while throwing the stones, Yonho acts impressed, praising him for dodging it and noting his improvement. Standing up, Yonho scans the area and remarks that they are stronger than expected, deciding it is time to ramp up the difficulty since time is gold. However, the reality is that only Ian is barely standing while everyone else is completely wiped out on the ground. Breaking into a cold sweat while clutching his agonizing back, Ian desperately tries to protest, stammering that they are fine, but mid-sentence, he accidentally bites his tongue, crying out in pain. Completely ignoring his pleas, Yonho begins winding up his arm, recalling his master's words that training is only meaningful when you feel like you almost died that day. Charging up his next throw, this time getting a bit serious, Yonho warns Ian to either dodge it or block it. He hurls the rock straight at Ian with terrifying speed, causing Ian's eyes to widen in pure horror. As the sheer pressure of the incoming attack contorts his face, Ian realizes he is completely doomed. But just before impact, someone suddenly steps in and catches Yonho's rock barehanded. The rest of the disciples watch in absolute shock that someone was actually capable of blocking such a devastating strike. Ian is completely stunned but overjoyed to still be alive. Even Yonho himself is frozen in shock as he realizes the mysterious savior is none other than his own brother. Enraged, his brother marches toward him with a clenched fist, leaving a terrified Yonho to stammer out an excuse, pleading that he did not mean to. Cocking his fist back, his brother snaps that they can talk after he gets a proper beating. Breaking into a nervous sweat, Yonho takes a direct punch straight to the head. Watching this unfold, a stunned Ian wonders how the powerful Yonho got hit and why he didn't even try to dodge it. Yonho's brother continues unleashing a flurry of punches, yelling that if his problems were solved, he should have come straight home first. Defending himself from the onslaught, Yonho protests that he wrote a letter explaining he couldn't make it home due to urgent business. His brother snaps back, asking if he is seriously talking back to his older brother. Frustrated, Yonho fires back, asking why on earth he deserves to be beaten up when this is all because his brother left without him. He screams that he told him not to go so many times, but since he didn't come back, he was just trying to avoid the rain. His brother winds up for another slap, and while Yonho braces himself for the impact, his brother unexpectedly pulls him into a tight embrace, apologizing through his tears, saying it must have been so incredibly hard and that he is truly sorry for being late. Moved by the embrace, Yonho breaks down in tears as well, sobbing that he is sorry too and that he should have stayed exactly where he was told, even if it rained. Wiping his own eyes, his brother tells him to stop crying since he is a man, but Yonho retorts that he was crying too. Watching the emotional reunion, Sealwa gets deeply touched by the sight of the two brothers, while Muzin remarks in utter disbelief that the terrifying demon is actually capable of crying. Right on cue, their mother arrives, absolutely thrilled to see Yonho. Spotting her, Yonho runs toward her, crying out how much he missed his mom. His mother grabs him tightly by the cheeks, marveling at her dear boy and asking when he grew up so much, proudly declaring that he is a proper man now. Flashing a row of perfectly white teeth, Yonho whines to his mother that it hurts, but she immediately begins landing incredibly heavy smacks on his back. Groaning in pain, Yonho begs her to stop, but his mother screams, demanding to know where the hell he has been all this time. She calls him a damn brat, berating him for not contacting them for 5 whole years. Desperate, Yonho tells her to choose between hitting him or loving him. His brother steps in again, planting another swift punch on his head and snapping at him for talking back to their mother. Rubbing his head, Yonho grumbles internally that his brother is doing the exact same thing to him. Examining his face, his mother comments on how roughed up he looks, remarking that he must have gone through so many hardships to end up looking so ugly, adding that he used to be just as handsome as Sanho. Yonho thinks to himself that he was always the ugly one compared to his brother. He then asks them how they managed to travel all this way, and his mother explains that they heard he was at the Alliance, so they put everything aside just to come find him. Looking around, Yonho nervously asks about their dad. His mother looks around, wondering where that damn man went, asking Sanho if he wasn't just with them. His brother replies that the moment he heard the news, he rushed out without even looking back, so he isn't entirely sure. Spotting a figure in the distance, Yonho asks if that isn't their father standing right over there. Sure enough, their father arrives, and he is not happy at all. In fact, he looks absolutely furious as he roars Yonho's name. Seeing him, Yonho greets him, asking how he has been and jokingly questioning what happened or if he got beat up by someone. Absolutely enraged, his father charges straight at him, calling him a damn brat. Terrified by his father's furious expression, Yonho immediately takes off running, yelling to ask what is wrong. His father commands him to get over here, shouting that they have plenty of father and son talking to do, plenty of it. Bolting away, Yonho retorts that his father's face doesn't exactly look like it wants to do much talking. His father screams for him to stay right there, threatening that he is dead if he gets caught, especially after everything he had to suffer from the divine strategist because of him. Watching the chaotic scene unfold, Ian thinks to himself what an absolute mess this is, while the other disciples whisper among themselves, wondering if that man is really the legendary demon-slaying sword, and if this chaotic bunch is truly the family of Instructor Yonho. The chapter opens with the strategist sipping his tea, deep in thought. He wonders if Wei Zhonghan can truly handle that guy, even if they are family. A son who surpasses his father will always find a way to escape control. The strategist wishes he could kick him out to Guangdong's Wei clan this very instant, but he knows that casting away such power would be an absolute act of foolishness. He groans as his stomach pains grow worse by the day. Suddenly, someone approaches, asking if the strategist is there. To his utter shock, it is none other than the Alliance leader himself. Caught completely off guard, the strategist nervously asks what brings him all this way. The visitor casually responds that everyone knows how busy the strategist is, so it only makes sense for him to visit since he has some free time. This man is introduced as none other than Chansa, the absolute fist and leader of the venerate Heaven Orthodox Murim Alliance. Sitting down, he playfully asks to hear how the strategist managed to fall ill from stress. Meanwhile, the scene shifts to Yonho, who is standing with his arms raised high in the air. His father barks at him to raise his arms properly. Yonho sighs inwardly, realizing that absolutely nothing has changed since he left. His father continues to yell, demanding to know exactly what he did out there to drive someone like the strategist bedridden with stress. Yonho tries to protest, but his father cuts him off with a loud shout. Yonho points out that his father does not even know what he did wrong, yet he is already blindly scolding him. Unfazed, his father asks if he is mad. Yonho replies that rather than being mad, it just feels completely unfair. This sets his father off even more, cursing his damn mouth and threatening him to keep running it. Terrified, Yonho squeaks out, asking where his mother went. His father snaps back that she went to wash up and rest, demanding to know why he cares. Yonho then asks about his brother, only to find out he went to fetch Surian. Realizing he is completely isolated, Yonho notes to himself that there is no one around to save him. His father mockingly agrees that it is a fantastic situation. Yonho then asks why his father is even here instead of being at home. His father roars that he came all the way to Luoyang to drag him back, asking if Yonho thinks he has nothing better to do. After a brief pause, the father sighs, thinking that since it has been 5 years, perhaps this harsh approach is wrong. He finally tells Yonho to lower his arms. Yonho drops them with unbelievable speed, causing his father to question if that was a bit too fast. When asked what he has been up to lately, Yonho bluntly states that he will only speak when everyone is present. He immediately grabs a blanket and lies down right on the spot. Stunned, his father asks what on earth he is doing, to which Yonho replies that there is still time left, so he is going to take a nap and wants to be called when it is dinner time. Furious, his father bursts into a mad laugh as veins pop all over his face. As Yonho settles into sleep, his father furiously flips the bed over, sending Yonho crashing headfirst to the floor. Totally unfazed, Yonho simply remarks that his father is as vigorous as ever. Back with the Alliance leader and the strategist, the leader ponders the situation. He finds it incredibly strange, noting that looking at Y Zhonghan and Y Sanho, the Y clan is a deeply serious family. It is hard for him to believe that brothers born from the same womb could turn out so drastically different. The strategist responds that it is not entirely unheard of, but the alliance leader counters that Guangdong's Y clan is a highly prestigious name within Zhongyuan. Even if Zhonghan neglected him, it defies all reason for Yonho to turn out this lazy. Inwardly, the strategist sighs, knowing that trying to judge Yonho with logic will only bring a headache. The alliance leader then asks if Y Zhonghan has arrived at the alliance, and the strategist confirms that he has. Intrigued, the alliance leader decides he will fabricate an excuse to go meet the boy himself. The scene returns to Yonho, where a massive crowd has gathered. His father, mother, brother, and sister are all present, alongside Master Mujin of Manhwa and Seowa. Yonho begins recounting his journey, but his father completely refuses to believe him. He scoffs at the story, summarizing it sarcastically. Yonho coincidentally stumbled into a cave that happened to be the secret hideout of a past generation master, and by absorbing the consciousness left inside the master's inner core, he magically learned martial arts. Yonho cheekily praises his father for being so smart. This drives his father to yell that he might as well claim he fell off a cliff and found a dragon's inner core, demanding how any of this makes sense. Instantly, his mother rushes over to embrace him, crying out that her poor son must have suffered so much. His father looks on in disbelief, asking his wife if she actually buys this ridiculous story. Surprisingly, Master Mujin chimes in, stating that Yonho possesses a level of martial power that would be absolutely impossible to attain without such miraculous circumstances. Inwardly, the father loses his mind, wondering why Mujin is playing along, thinking it would be more realistic to claim the Bodhidharma himself came back to life. Even the Kaifeng branch leader of the house sect calls it a truly fated encounter, while the leader of the beggar sect curses aloud, lamenting that he has searched through all kinds of mountains just to beg, yet nothing like this ever happens to him. Seowa softly offers her sympathies, acknowledging that young Master Y has truly suffered. Meanwhile, the father watches the scene in absolute bewilderment, wondering why everyone is accepting this nonsense as if it were an obvious truth. Suddenly, Yonho's older brother, Sanho, steps forward. The father feels a surge of hope, proud of his cool-headed oldest son, confident that Sanho would never believe such garbage. Sanho sternly asks where the origins of this old man, or rather, his master, came from. Yonho lazily replies that he thinks it was some Baek clan or something, asking why it matters. To the father's absolute horror, Sanho erupts in anger, shouting that no matter how old and wise that master was, making Yonho endure such hellish training was unacceptable. He praises Yonho for enduring it well, but notes that things could have gone terribly wrong. Sanho furiously demands to know where this master is so he can speak with him directly. Yonho tells him to calm down, assuring him that absolutely no traces of the master remain. The father completely loses all hope, wondering when his brilliant, cool-headed son turned into such an idiot. At this point, Yonho finds himself wrapped in pure harmony. His mother hugs him tightly, expressing how incredibly proud she is of her baby, while his brother gives him a supportive nod, calling it a job well done. Even his sister throws her arms around him, declaring her older brother to be the absolute best. Yonho is floating on cloud 9, but on the other side of the room, his father is burning with jealousy. Furious that Yonho is receiving so much unearned affection, a single tear rolls down the father's cheek as he laments how the true feelings of the righteous chivalrous swordsman are being completely ignored. Suddenly, a loud knock echoes through the door. A voice announces that the alliance leader has arrived and asks if Master Y is inside. The room falls into immediate shock. The alliance leader steps through the door, radiating an incredibly oppressive aura that forces almost everyone to their knees in deep respect. He greets Yonho's father, noting that it has been a long time and joking that Zhonghan has aged since they last met. Zhonghan politely insists that he should have been the one to visit first, but the alliance leader waves it off. Throughout this, Yonho watches the entire exchange with a completely stone-cold, unbothered expression. The alliance leader explains that he is not so inconsiderate as to demand a meeting with a man who has not seen his son in 5 years just for his own sake. However, knowing he would not have time later, he felt compelled to come personally. Jonghan humbles himself, thanking him for his immense kindness and welcoming him in. As the alliance leader sits down, his sharp gaze locks onto Yonho. Inwardly, he notes that the boy does not resemble his father in the slightest. He addresses the young man directly, identifying him as Y Yonho. With zero respect or hesitation, Yonho fires back, asking if the leader knows him. In the background, his father completely flips out internally, screaming to himself that his son is a crazy bastard. The alliance leader chuckles, stating he has heard a great deal about him and wanted to see what kind of child he was with his own eyes. A panicked Jonghan immediately begs for forgiveness, apologizing for failing to raise his son properly. But the alliance leader dismisses the apology, revealing that the strategist simply could not stop talking about him. Yonho talks back as if he is speaking to an ordinary kid, stating that he is just a lazy guy who loves doing absolutely nothing under the covers. The alliance leader smiles, countering that he is apparently a remarkably strong lazy guy. He begins to unleash his terrifying inner power, declaring that in the Jianghu, strength is the only thing that truly matters. Using his immense energy, he levitates a samovar directly into the air, leaving the onlookers completely shell-shocked as they whisper about the object floating in midair. With blinding speed, Yonho snatches the floating samovar using his own inner power. He smoothly offers to pour a cup, explaining that his master taught him it is only right to refill an elder's cup when it is empty. Impressed by his grasp of drinking etiquette, the alliance leader allows him to pour. After draining the tea in one gulp, the leader tells Yonho to take a cup. Yonho casually warns him, stating out of genuine concern that the leader should avoid using his inner energy to make the cup heavy or blow it up just to gauge his power level. Amused, the alliance leader asks if he really looks like the type of person who would resort to such petty tricks. Yonho looks him dead in the eye and replies that he certainly does not look like someone who wouldn't. He adds that based on the vibe the leader gives off, he seems highly authoritative and deeply fond of disciplining others. Amused, the alliance leader asks if he means like a boomer. Yonho gasps in mock surprise, wondering how the leader even knows a modern term like that. The alliance leader bursts into a booming laugh, declaring that he truly likes Yonho. He states that he despises sloppy, half-hearted tests. Standing up abruptly, he issues a direct challenge. They are going to fight. A devastating, catastrophic power erupts from the alliance leader, his aura manifesting into the terrifying shape of a roaring tiger. Instinctively, Yonho's own hidden power flares up in response. Both Mujin and Yonho's father are completely paralyzed by the sheer weight of the alliance leader's presence, marveling at the immense pressure. But to everyone's absolute horror, Yonho flatly refuses, stating he simply does not want to. The alliance leader freezes, repeating in disbelief that he does not want to. Yonho calmly confirms it. Annoyed, the leader asks if Yonho even knows who he is. Yonho replies that of course he does, he is the alliance leader. The leader presses further, asking how he can still turn him down when countless martial artists dream of exchanging a single blow with him, noting that people would pack their bags and run to him if he offered them a duel. Yonho nonchalantly suggests that the leader should just fight them instead, killing 2 birds with 1 stone, since there is absolutely no need to fight a guy like him. Stunned by this logic, the alliance leader suddenly sits back down, throwing a temper tantrum like a spoiled child. He whines that if he wants to fight, then Yonho absolutely must fight, adding that if Yonho hates it so much, he should just try becoming the orthodox Miram alliance leader himself. At that moment, Sanho steps in to de-escalate the tension. He apologizes for interrupting, but points out that Yonho is still far too young, and it is completely unreasonable to expect him to duel the alliance leader when it comes to knowledge or raw ability. However, Master Mujin immediately objects, telling Sanho that he is severely misjudging the situation. As Sanho looks on in confusion, Mujin explains that the Y Yonho he knows is more than capable of holding his own ground against the alliance leader. He warns Sanho not to judge his brother through biased family eyes, but rather to view him as a highly respectable and formidable martial artist. Sanho slowly turns to his younger brother, demanding to know if Mujin is telling the truth. Terrified of his brother's intense gaze, Yonho stammers out a denial, claiming that the old mister is just making things up. Sanho refuses to back down, ordering Yonho to stop avoiding his eyes and answer him honestly. He presses down hard, telling Yonho that if he truly possesses the capability, it is incredibly impolite to refuse the Alliance leader's generous offer. He reminds Yonho that the Alliance leader basically considers himself his godfather, asking if he is really going to refuse such a grand request just for the sake of his own lazy comfort. Sanho delivers a brutal verbal lecture, stating that anyone who understands neither gratitude nor manners is lower than a wild beast, and he refuses to believe his own brother is a mindless animal. He asks Yonho point-blank if he is wrong. Yonho begs him to stop, feeling as though his ears are about to bleed from the relentless scolding. Totally defeated and forced completely against his own will, he finally gives in, groaning that he will do it and accept the duel. The Alliance leader bursts into an ecstatic laugh, praising it as a wise decision and declaring it a truly splendid night. Looking at the cheering leader, Yonho is filled with pure, unadulterated misery. He curses inwardly, furious that his peaceful sleep is being ruined for a forced match. His eyes flare with a dangerous spark as he vows to show them what a real battle looks like. Prepare yourselves, because Yonho's true fury is about to unleash. The chapter opens at the secret training ground hidden deep within the rugged mountains. Taking in the majestic view, Gong Mujin remarks on what a magnificent training ground it truly is. Chance turns to him, explaining that this is a sacred place outsiders can never hope to enter. Hearing this, Yonho scoffs arrogantly, muttering that he could easily enter whenever he wants if he just puts his mind to it. The Alliance leader looks around, noting that there are very few people with the actual guts to disobey his direct orders and sneak in here. However, he adds, if there are any brave enough to do so, they are definitely in for a good show. Watching the young warrior closely, the Alliance leader thinks to himself that to have mastered martial arts at the tender age of 20, Yonho must be a young expert unparalleled in the entire history of the Jianghu. His influence will undoubtedly shake the world. He admits that in terms of pure talent, the boy's older brother is also perfect material to be an exemplar to others. He wonders, however, why it had to be this lazy younger brother, and not the disciplined older one, who managed to reach such an incredible level. Sensing the intense gaze, Yonho catches him staring and demands to know why he is looking at him with those eyes, noting that it feels exactly like the disapproving way his own father looks at him. Chance chuckles, asking if that isn't a good thing. But Yonho, completely full of himself, snaps back, demanding to know who said it is a good thing and asking the old man what he even knows. Mortified by the disrespect, Yonho's father steps forward to apologize for his son's terrible attitude, while Sanho delivers a swift, disciplinary punch to the back of Yonho's head. Watching the chaotic family dynamic, the Alliance leader sighs internally, thinking that Zhonghan must have suffered immensely trying to raise him. Now, the two combatants finally stand face to face, ready to begin this monumental clash. Sensing the oncoming storm, Gong Mujin warns the onlookers that it would be much better for them to step back even further. A bit perplexed, Zhonghan asks if they really need to move even further away from where they are already standing. Mujin confirms it firmly, repeating that they absolutely must step back further. He then turns to Great Hero Y and Sanho, asking them to please protect the others, unable to hide his absolute excitement to witness this duel. Filled with anxiety, Yonho's mother asks her husband if the Alliance leader is going to kill him, wondering if, no matter how much her son's skills have improved, he could ever truly be a match for someone of that supreme caliber. Zhonghan tries to reassure her, stating that he will probably hold back, since surely a master wouldn't go all out against a rising star. Meanwhile, Mujin smiles grimly to himself, thinking about the phrase hold back. If the Alliance leader is foolishly thinking along those lines, he is in for a rude awakening. Readying himself, Chance tightens his fist and asks Yonho if he by any chance learned his martial arts from the fabled Sword Emperor's treasure. Yonho flatly denies it, explaining that he is already having a hard time digesting the martial arts he currently possesses, so there is absolutely no need to learn that too. To himself, he casually adds that besides, it looks like complete nonsense anyway. Amused, Chance presses further, asking if he really feels that way even though it is the legendary martial arts of the Sword Emperor. Yonho counters, asking if he has ever actually seen it. Chance confirms that he has. Yonho then asks if he learned it himself, to which Chance simply replies that he is a fist fighter. Flexing his massive muscles, the Alliance leader states that whatever the case, it is fine, as he will finally be able to loosen up his body for the first time in a long while today. He admits he has been incredibly bored lately, because he hasn't had any reason to use his true strength. Yonho brings up his earlier boast, asking if didn't he just say there were countless people clamoring to be taught by him. Chance groans, explaining that against kids who look like they would literally die if he hit them a single time, it is incredibly exhausting to fight so carefully. Cracking his knuckles, he complains that the decent masters avoid matches entirely just to save face. So in the end, he is stuck living his life doing instructional spars with total greenhorns. He asks if anyone wouldn't find that incredibly annoying. Yonho chuckles, noting that the poor kids who received his instruction would beat the ground in pure frustration if they ever heard him say that. Still warming up before the real fight, Chance responds that perhaps they would, but right now, he is genuinely happy because it seems like Yonho can adequately handle his fists. In an instant, Yonho draws his blade. His entire aura shifts dramatically, turning cold and deadly serious. Seeing this, Chance notes internally that the very atmosphere has changed, before asking aloud if he is ready. Yonho adopts a focused expression, stating that his master used to say that no matter how tiger-like a martial artist is, the moment they underestimate their opponent, they are as good as dead. He adds that a true martial artist must accurately assess their opponent's capabilities in any situation. Chance begins to bounce on his toes like a seasoned boxer, acknowledging that his master gave him some excellent teachings. Yonho drops into a deep stance, the raw pressure shattering the ground beneath his feet, declaring one final rule: no martial artist under the heavens can dare to act leisurely in front of his sword. With that, he explosively charges forward. He aims a lethal strike straight for the face, but Chance quickly blocks using his heavy fists. The moment the Alliance leader notices his steel gauntlets are actually being sliced through, he forcefully deflects Yonho's sword using his pure strength. Internally, he marvels that the boy is definitely everything the rumors claimed. No, he is far beyond the rumors. He wonders how such a free-spirited, wild swordsmanship can even exist, questioning if this can even be classified as traditional swordsmanship at all. Remarkably, even while trading deadly blows with the supreme leader of the Alliance, Yonho keeps making the funniest, most ridiculous faces. Chance notes that the style lacks any formality, and its flow is completely unreadable. It looks entirely haphazard, yet the sheer power imbued in every single strike is extraordinary. He reminds himself that he only called the kid out to play, but the boy is rushing in with intent to kill. Yonho unleashes a devastatingly powerful strike, forcing the Alliance leader to wonder if the boy is throwing a literal tantrum just because he didn't want to spar. Chance quickly ducks to evade the blow, closing the distance between them. He tells himself that even so, he absolutely cannot go easy on him. At point-blank range, he charges a cataclysmic punch and drives it directly into Yonho's stomach, unleashing a massive explosion of wind that blasts out from behind the young swordsman's body. However, Chance's eyes suddenly widen in pure shock. Yonho has somehow managed to completely block the devastating strike by bracing with his shoulder and his left arm. Dumbfounded, the Alliance leader gasps internally, wondering how he could have possibly blocked it. Even so, the sheer force of the impact sends Yonho skidding backward, prompting him to yell out for the old man to take it easy. Chance throws his head back and laughs. Enveloping his fists in a roaring aura, he lunges forward, shouting for the brat to come at him and play. He strikes with every ounce of his strength, creating a massive shockwave of wind that tears through the area. The spectators watch on, completely stupefied by the apocalyptic display of power, while Sanho and Mujin are forced to draw their weapons just to shield everyone from the violent gale. Terrified by the intensity, Sanho asks Mujin if they shouldn't step in and stop them right now, but Mujin replies that there is absolutely no room for them to intervene in a fight of this level. Chance continues to unleash a relentless barrage of punches, resembling a literal Gatling gun, as Yonho desperately parries every single strike with his sword. Yonho yells out that if he keeps pushing like this, he is going to get serious too, but Chance fires back, demanding to know since when he wasn't being serious. Defending against the onslaught, Yonho thinks to himself that while this old man talks like a carefree, good-natured person, the crushing weight behind every single hit is on an entirely different level. Dodging a massive fist, he mutters that it can't be helped. He leaps backward to create some distance, leaving Chance surprised by the sudden retreat. Yonho drops into a low stance, unleashing his full latent power. A blinding aura begins to envelop both him and his weapon, and the very center of his blade illuminates into a glowing X shape. Sensing the shift, Chance releases his own cataclysmic energy, praising the boy for lowering his center of gravity and calling it a splendid stance. He challenges him to try and take his next attack. Both warriors have now completely unleashed their hidden might, their surging auras tightly wrapping around them. As Chance winds up his fist to its absolute maximum, his muscles expand to an enormous size, leaving Mujin and Zhonghan utterly paralyzed with shock at the terrifying pressure. With all the ambient energy concentrating entirely into his fist, the onlookers stare in horror. Chance invokes his ultimate technique, Heavenly King's Heavenly Rain. A gargantuan, phantom fist of pure energy surges directly toward Yonho. Remaining steadfast in his stance, Yonho counters by activating his own ultimate technique, Mad Sword Soul Sovereign, 10,000 swords under heaven. Watching the catastrophic collision, Yonho's terrified parents scream his name, fully convinced that this is the absolute end of their son. Echoing the profound words taught by his master, Yonho declares that his sword is invincible. Channeling his unstoppable power, his foot digs so deeply into the ground that it leaves a massive footprint on the floor as he launches himself directly into the Alliance leader's gigantic phantom fist. Unbelievably, he begins to shatter the massive energy construct piece by piece, forcing it to dissolve completely into nothingness as if it were a minor inconvenience. The spectators cannot believe their own eyes, frozen in absolute shock by what they have just witnessed. Yonho charges straight through the debris toward the visibly shaken Alliance leader. Panicking internally, Chance realizes with horror that his Heavenly King's heavenly reign has been completely broken. As Yonho closes the distance, Chance desperately tries to charge another punch, but Yonho suddenly halts right in front of his face and abruptly turns his head to look in the completely opposite direction. Standing there with his fists still wound up, Chance freezes, entirely unable to comprehend what is happening, while the onlookers watch in utter confusion. Seeing him stand frozen, Chance wonders in disbelief why the boy is looking away in the middle of a life or death situation. Overcome with curiosity, the Alliance leader instinctively glances over in that same direction. It is a fatal mistake. It was all a brilliant tactical ruse. The moment Chance looks away, Yonho viciously strikes him, slamming him violently into the ground while his family watches on, completely dumbfounded. In that moment of victory, Yonho recalls a valuable lesson from his master, who once told him that a stylish, one-strike duel is a luxury you cannot afford in a life or death battle, and that he must do whatever it takes to win, even if it means resorting to a dirty trick. Driving his sword deep into the dirt right next to Chance's face, Yonho looks down at him with a smirk, asking if it's safe to say that he won. Chance bursts into laughter, wondering to himself how long it has been since he last fell to the ground during a duel. He readily admits defeat, openly declaring that he loses. Standing nearby, Yonho's father is so completely shocked by the result that his mouth hangs wide open for several seconds. Sanho, equally stunned, mutters a quiet goodness. His father then questions if that is truly his son, noting that while it is wonderful that he has gotten stronger, he wonders what kind of shameless strategy that was. Chance pushes himself up, thinking to himself that he has been too spoiled by peace. Had it been 10 years ago, he knows he would not have lost like this. He turns to Yonho and tells him directly that he is strong, ridiculously strong even. Yonho laughs sheepishly, replying that he hears that quite often. Curious, Chance asks him what the name of his sword technique is. Yonho answers that there isn't one, explaining that his master told him if he knows the flow of the river, he does not need to know the river's name. Chance counters that it is not a matter of having no name, but rather that there is no technique at all. To himself, he marvels at how amazing it is. Suddenly, Chance begins to tremble. Noticing this, Yonho asks if he wants to keep going anyway. Chance responds that he thinks it is best they stop here. Yonho chuckles, agreeing that it is a good idea. Internally, Chance reflects that why Yonho is the future leader of this world. However, he knows such a role comes with a heavy responsibility, and it is not a position someone can just back out of because they want to. Still, he muses that perhaps it was heaven's will that this responsibility was given to someone as lazy as him. Chance then speaks aloud, admitting he never thought the day would come when he would be envious of Wai Zhonghan, adding that it would be nice if he had a son like Yonho. Zhonghan immediately snaps back that Chance can just take him. Chance laughs it off, saying he will think about that, before announcing to everyone that they should go drink since he is in a great mood today. Secretly, he wonders about that sword style of radiance, feeling as though he has seen it somewhere before, though he quickly dismisses the thought as highly unlikely. Sometime later, Chance finds himself speaking with Hyan, who asks if Chance just told him to leave the boy alone. Chance answers naturally, asking why not. Hyan fails to understand the reasoning, so Chance explains that a person can only see a prodigy like that once in a lifetime. It was the first time for either of them to witness someone so immensely talented. He notes that while it is natural to want to utilize him, that is merely the wish of an ordinary man. The world will never leave a child that talented alone, and perhaps a much more cruel fate awaits him. Therefore, he advises to just let him be for now. Hyan remains deeply confused, thinking to himself that the alliance leader has always been a man of the Murim, while he is a general strategist, meaning there is an unbridgeable gap of understanding between them. He then tells Chance that he will do as he says, but requests to check just one thing. He asks if Wai Yonho is truly so strong that they must leave him alone, so strong that they should treat him not as a young martial artist with potential, but as a master in his own right. Chance reflects deeply before answering that he doesn't quite know how to explain it. If they were to properly fight, he would win, of course, but he lacks the confidence that he could win without hurting him. To himself, he adds that there is no guarantee he wouldn't come out of it injured either. Clenching his fist, he admits aloud that he feels he still hasn't seen the boy's true potential. He thought there would be something hidden in that fist of his, but there wasn't, yet he still cannot shake the feeling that something deeper remains. Hyan remarks that the boy didn't seem all that special. Chance challenges this, asking if Hyan really didn't think the results of Yonho's idiotic actions were good. He explains that Yonho might possess a deeper mind than they think, so they must leave him be. If he was born for turbulent times, he will fulfill his duty even if they just leave him alone. An adult should lighten the burden of a child, not add to it, asking if Hyan understands. Hyan respectfully complies, responding with a simple yes, sir. Alone with his thoughts, Chance concludes that whether Yonho is a true dragon or just an imposter, the world will eventually tell. 1 week later, Zhonghan bursts into his son's room, slamming the door open, and yells at him that the sun is already in the middle of the sky. Yonho is lying in his bed under his usual blanket as his father screams that he went to sleep before the sun even set, yet he is still not awake even though the sun is high up. He furiously demands to know if Yonho doesn't even need to use the restroom. Yonho calmly explains that he just needs to avoid drinking as much water. His father is absolutely furious, thinking to himself that while he felt incredibly proud after witnessing his son's duel with the alliance leader, the boy's sheer existence alone raises his blood pressure. He demands to know what Yonho plans on doing now, shouting that a man with skills like his should have ambitions and dreams. Sifting out a sigh, Yonho tells his father that he does have dreams, reminding him that he earned quite a bit of money. His father admits he is aware of that, but asks what comes next. Yonho points out that earning money is a good dream, noting that as the man of the house, his father should understand that well. His father reluctantly agrees that it is true. Yonho then proudly explains that he created multiple modes of passive income, so now he is just going to live a completely cushy life. Dumbfounded, his father asks what the hell he is talking about. An extremely euphoric Yonho clarifies that he is saying he has already achieved his dream and succeeded in life, so now he can simply lounge around. Completely losing his temper, his father roars at him to get up right now, calling him a rotten bastard. He grabs the bed and lifts it entirely into the air, sending Yonho crashing to the floor. Tumbling down, Yonho remarks that he feels like his father has actually gotten stronger since coming here. A short moment later, Yonho's entire family gathers together, and even Gong Mujin is present, wondering to himself why on earth he is being involved in this family meeting. Jonghan addresses the group, stating that unfortunately, he has learned Yonho is just as lazy as ever. Suryan adds that he truly is lazy, noting that if he had studied with that kind of attitude, he would have easily passed the civil service exam in the past. Annoyed, Jonghan emphasizes that what makes it worse is that he has achieved absolute greatness in martial arts. His wife questions if that isn't a good thing, but he firmly tells her no, explaining that a renowned sword rusts if it is not used, and they must find a way to cure that laziness. Sanho interjects, suggesting that there might be a way, since as they all know, Yonho actually has a strong sense of responsibility. His father, startled, asks him to repeat that. When Sanho dutifully reiterates that Yonho has a strong sense of responsibility, his father despairs, asking Sanho if he is losing him too, demanding to know what the hell he is saying. Sanho explains that if Yonho is assigned some kind of work, he will get it done no matter what. Gong Mujin chimes in to confirm that this is absolutely true. Jonghan refuses to believe it, wondering to himself what kind of nonsense this is. Suryan adds that it is just that he doesn't want to do it, but if he feels it is something that truly needs to be done, he will do it. His father sighs internally, questioning if he is the only normal person left in the room. Jin Yeren speaks up, declaring that he is the most responsible, strong, and kind person she knows, adding that he will step up to help others even without being asked. Hearing this, Jonghan stands up and tells his wife that this is great. Surprised, she asks what he means. He tells her they should decide on a date, and when she asks for what, he remarks that he thinks Jin Yeren has a severe case of crazy rose-tinted glasses. Before he can finish his sentence, his wife pinches him sharply, telling him to cut the nonsense and listen to Sanho. Right at that moment, the beggar sect leader walks in, admitting that he also has to agree that Yonho is remarkably responsible. Jonghan mutters bitterly that the future of the beggar sect is incredibly dark. Gong Mujin states that he understands how Jonghan feels, but points out that Yonho's achievements in the Jianghu are by no means small. The beggar sect leader then lists them all out: rescuing the royal head inspector, resurrecting the sacred hand manor, defeating the demonic cult, punishing the ghost blade demon duo, and resolving the massacre on Mount Luo. He adds that as they all witnessed, he even fought the alliance leader. Jonghan thinks to himself that if all of those feats are true, he wonders if it is actually possible that this child possesses a genuine sense of responsibility. Sanho suggests that this means they simply need to give him things to do. In order to accomplish that, they must first get him out of the Murim alliance, since no major incidents will happen here anyway. Gong Mujin notes that it is easy to say, but questions how they are going to drag him out. However, the beggar sect leader chuckles into his beard, saying it is not impossible. Laughing maniacally, he tells them not to worry, because there is something the boy absolutely has to get involved in. The scene shifts back to Yonho, who suddenly bolts upright in bed, screaming. Calming himself down, he thinks to himself about that damn training dream, muttering that it is a bit too cruel and feels as though he didn't even sleep at all. At that exact moment, someone opens his bedroom door. It is Jean Yeren, who has brought him a massive spread of delicious food, leaving Yonho completely surprised. She greets him warmly, saying it is nice to see him. Startled, Yonho responds that it is nice to see her too, but asks why she is there. She explains that she was able to accompany his family thanks to a stroke of coincidence. She tells him that while it might not be much, she tried her best, so she asks him to please eat. It is clear she has completely fallen for our protagonist. Yonho tells her she didn't have to do all this, but she softly counters that if it weren't for him, both her mind and body might have been ruined by now. To himself, Yonho thinks that he can't get used to this kind of gentle treatment, especially after listening to his father's non-stop berating all day. Jean Yeren urges him to please eat before it gets cold, and he agrees that he might as well. Their eyes lock, and to him, she looks like an incredibly beautiful goddess, causing him to blush slightly as he thinks to himself that she really is pretty. Just as he prepares to eat, a sudden knock sounds at the door. It is Seolwa, who has also brought a meal for him. She freezes upon seeing another woman in Yonho's room, wondering who she could be, while Jean Yeren simultaneously demands to know who this newcomer is. Jean Yeren looks down at the meal Seolwa prepared and immediately notices it is far inferior to the lavish dishes she brought herself. She flashes a triumphant look, signaling clear victory. Seolwa absolutely despises this arrogant attitude. Caught right in the middle of this terrifying, brewing storm, Yonho can only wonder what this awful sensation is. For the first time in his life, why Yonho feels true fear. After a tense moment of absolute silence, Seolwa decides to step back and quietly leaves the room without saying a single word. Yonho watches her go, completely caught off guard, utterly baffled as to why she just abruptly walked out like that. Breaking the silence, Jean Yeren turns to him, coldly addressing him as her savior. She urges him to eat his food right away, warning that it will lose its flavor if it gets cold, coldly adding that the unwanted guest has finally left. A cold sweat washes over Yonho. He panics internally, muttering to himself that this stressful atmosphere is going to give him a massive case of indigestion, or honestly, he probably already has it. Suddenly, Jean Yeren lifts up the meal she brought, catching Yonho completely by surprise. Sensing his hesitation, she offers to prepare an entirely new meal for him since it seems he dislikes this one, asking him to give her just a single minute. Yonho frantically stops her, stammering out that there is absolutely no need because the food is good, or rather, he is absolutely certain it tastes amazing. She looks at him skeptically, asking if he truly means it. To prove his point, Yonho begins stuffing his face at lightning speed, loudly exclaiming that of course he loves it, telling her to just look at how enthusiastically he is eating. Yeren softens slightly, expressing her relief, but she gently advises him to slow down. Internally, Yonho screams in frustration, begging this woman to just step back and actually let him eat at a normal pace. Right at that chaotic moment, Yonho's mother walks into the room, announcing that he needs to make sure he eats properly. However, the moment she spots him eating with Jean Yeren sitting right there, she instantly misinterprets the entire situation. Gasping dramatically, she scolds herself for being so foolish and quickly backs out, promising to leave the two of them entirely alone. Yonho immediately springs up and chases after her, desperately yelling that it is absolutely not what it looks like. His mother simply smiles, assuring him that it is perfectly fine and remarking that it is about time he started taking a proper interest in women. Just then, his father, Jong-han, walks up, noting that it is getting late, but he is instantly silenced when his wife lands a brutal pinch right on his side. Wincing in pain, Jong-han barks at Sang-ah, demanding to know why on earth she is doing this to him. Meanwhile, the scene shifts over to Gong Mujin, who is practically floating on cloud 9. It turns out that the delicious food Seolwa had originally prepared for Yonho has been brought straight to him instead. He digs in happily, praising how incredible it looks and admiring how deeply considerate she is of her master, proudly claiming that he raised her incredibly well. However, Gong Mujin quickly notices the lingering hesitation on her face and asks if there is something she wants to tell him. Without warning, Seolwa drops directly to her knees, solemnly declaring that she has an important confession to make to her master. Gong Mujin immediately pulls her back up, reminding her that the floor is freezing cold, and gently asks what is on her mind. With a serious look, she apologizes deeply before dropping a bombshell. She needs money. Stunned, Gong Mujin stares at her, demanding to know what she could possibly need money for, reminding her that the sect already provides her with all the food and shelter she could ever need. Sealwa fires back that food and shelter are simply not enough anymore. Thinking directly of her rival, Jean Yeren, she explains that while she has never felt lacking under his care before, she has suddenly encountered a formidable adversary, a great enemy she cannot possibly face entirely on her own. Completely misinterpreting her words, Gong Mujin gasps at the mention of a great adversary. Burning with martial pride, he tells her that she absolutely must emerge victorious, eagerly asking what he can do to back her up. Sealwa looks him dead in the eye and requests two things: groceries and makeup. Gong Mujin is utterly bewildered, asking why on earth she would ever need that kind of stuff to fight a powerful opponent, telling her that she should be using her sword instead. Sealwa snaps back with a firm no, passionately insisting that she absolutely needs groceries, makeup, and new clothes. She begs him to trust her just this once, swearing up and down that she will repay his generosity tenfold. Reluctantly giving in, Gong Mujin groans and pulls a small pouch of coins from his pocket, hesitantly asking exactly how much she needs. But before he can even finish his sentence, Sealwa snatches the entire bag of money at lightning speed. She quickly thanks him, cheerfully tells him to enjoy his meal, and vanishes into thin air. Left holding nothing but empty air, Gong Mujin stares blankly, muttering to himself that for some strange, unexplainable reason, he suddenly feels like crying. The scene shifts to Chance, who is staring wide-eyed at an official letter, loudly questioning the sudden announcement of a martial arts competition. Standing nearby are Hyan and the rest of Yonho's family. Hyan steps forward to clarify, explaining that to be entirely precise, the official title is the Global Friendship Youth Martial Competition. Chance scoffs at the document, noting that it is certainly quite a flamboyant name. Hyan's expression turns dead serious as he warns that it isn't just the name that is extravagant. This grand event proves that the Heavenly Will Alliance has officially begun to make its move. Chance remains skeptical, waving it off as a simple, friendly duel and asking the general strategist if he isn't reading far too deeply into things. Hyan firmly shuts down his skepticism, arguing that it isn't an overreaction at all. He explains that because both factions represent the Orthodox Murim, it is incredibly difficult for either side to engage in a direct, face-to-face war. Consequently, everything hinges on who commands the most renowned young martial artists. For the Heavenly Will Alliance, overtaking the Orthodox Murim Alliance is an incredibly steep uphill battle because the Murim Alliance built an untouchable public image during the brutal war against the demonic cult. However, if the rival alliance dominates this upcoming competition, the public's perception will shift in an instant. Chance finally catches on, realizing that even if their rivals are lagging behind right now, a strong showing means the future will look completely different. Hyan nods grimly, confirming that this tournament will literally showcase the future of power. Trying to lift the mood, Chance points out that their own children are remarkably talented, specifically highlighting powerhouses like Wai Sanho. Hyan concedes that the demon-slaying sword is undoubtedly one of the most terrifyingly powerful young martial artists alive today. However, he challenges Chance, asking if the other youths can truly measure up to him, or how they would compare to Chance himself back when he was their age. Chance falls silent, forced to admit that even if Wai Sanho secures a victory, they will be utterly cornered if every other winning spot is seized by the Heavenly Will Alliance. Hyan smiles subtly, noting that while they would have been in trouble before, things are different now because they have Wai Yonho. With both Wai Sanho and Wai Yonho participating side by side, they will not only solidify their glorious image to the public, but also stage the perfect, unmissable debut for Yonho into the wider Jianghu. Impressed by the grand strategy, Chance praises just how brilliant Hyan truly is. Meanwhile, Sanho turns to the leader of the beggar sect, asking if this grand tournament is the exact matter he was hinting at earlier. The beggar sect leader explains that given Yonho's current massive status, The boy has absolutely no choice but to step up and represent the alliance. He remarks that if Sanho is a rare, once-in-a-generation martial prodigy, then Yonho is an outright monstrous genius the likes of which the world may never see again. Sanho quietly processes this, a subtle, knowing smile creeping onto his face. The beggar sect leader jumps back in sheer shock, utterly stunned, questioning if the famously stoic Sanho just actually smiled. Before the tension can rise, Yonho's father steps in apologetically, interrupting the meeting. He points out that while the conclusion is perfectly clear and they obviously need Yonho to join the competition, they are overlooking the absolute hardest part of the entire plan, actually getting that lazy boy out of his bed in the first place. Chance bluntly fires back, telling him that since Yonho is his son, figuring out how to handle him is strictly his own problem. The father stammers defensively, arguing that the boy is already fully independent and out of his hands, but his wife violently pinches him yet again. She glares at him, demanding to know if he is seriously bragging about his parenting right now. Terrified, the father instantly flips his tone, loudly proclaiming just how immensely proud he is of his fiercely independent son. Amused by the display, Sanho addresses the alliance leader, announcing that he actually knows a foolproof, incredibly simple method to get his brother to move, a tactic so absolute that Yonho will be completely powerless to fight against it. Chance looks intrigued but skeptical, noting that regardless of what anyone has tried up until now, Yonho has always successfully managed to just lounge around lazily. Sanho clarifies the misunderstanding, explaining that while their father mistakenly believes Yonho is terrified of him, that isn't true at all. They are merely a bit awkward around one another. The only person in the entire world that Yonho genuinely, deeply fears is their mother. Cut to a short time later, and the tactic is in full effect. Yonho is literally on his knees, desperately begging his mother. He pleads with her, swearing that he will absolutely go to the competition, begging her to please just let him come along with them. His mother looks down at him calmly, explaining that she isn't angry because he initially refused to go. Rather, she is deeply disappointed by his utter lack of consideration for his own sister, heavily reminding him that once she and his father eventually pass away, the siblings will only have each other left in this world. She firmly asks him how on earth he expects to protect his younger sister with that kind of lazy attitude. Internally, Yonho is kicking himself in pure agony, wishing he had just happily agreed the very first moment she brought it up, bitterly cursing his own stupid mouth. His mother asks if he truly understands the weight of her words. Yonho nods frantically, shouting that he understands her perfectly now. Testing him, she shifts her gaze and asks him to explain exactly what she meant then. Yonho immediately begins to stutter and trip over his words, completely lost. Sighing in disappointment, his mother prepares to explain the entire lecture all over again from the absolute beginning. Terrified of another endless lecture, Yonho panics and screams at the top of his lungs, vowing that he will protect his sister no matter what humanly possible cost it takes, fiercely declaring that anyone who dares to even lay a single finger on her will be sent flying directly to Antarctica. His mother smiles warmly, satisfied that he finally gets the point, and asks if he is officially coming along. Yonho enthusiastically agrees, begging her to let him join the journey. She gently pats his head, praising him as a good son, but as she turns to walk away, she casually drops a terrifying parting line, telling him that they will make sure to sit down and discuss this entire matter thoroughly again during dinner. Yonho is left completely shattered in silent desperation, screaming internally in pure horror at the fact that they have to talk about this nightmare all over again. The very next day, Chance's boisterous laughter echoes through the courtyard. He looks around at the gathered crowd, boisterously welcoming everyone and expressing his immense satisfaction at seeing them all assembled. Yonho, looking like an absolute zombie, raises a weak hand and throws out a completely miserable, casual greeting. Chance frowns at his lackluster energy, demanding to know what is wrong with his attitude. Yonho sighs, bluntly asking if they can all just skip the grand speeches and hit the road already, complaining that the longer Chance talks, the more his fighting morale plummets into the dirt. Instantly, a heavy smack lands right on the back of his head as Sanho steps up, furiously reprimanding him for showing such an incredibly disrespectful attitude toward the esteemed alliance leader. Yonho yelps in genuine pain, rubbing his head and snapping back to ask what on earth he did to deserve that. Sanho sternly reminds him that he is carrying the proud reputation of their entire family on his shoulders, but Yonho fires right back, loudly demanding to know if he actually said anything wrong. Sanho glares at him, telling him he needs to learn exactly when it is time to speak and when it is time to keep his mouth shut. Watching the brothers bicker, Chance narrows his eyes, noting to himself that both of these brats are clearly throwing subtle shade at him, deeply regretting that he didn't give Yonho a proper beating the last time he had the chance. Clearing his throat, Chance wraps things up, curtly telling them to just go out there and perform well. Yonho immediately raises his hand yet again, interrupting to ask a final question. He looks around the small group, asking if this is seriously the entire roster of participants, noting he was under the impression that the opposing faction was bringing well over 10 representatives. Hyen steps in to answer, explaining that the other chosen martial artists are currently fully occupied with their own intense, specialized training. He reassures him that those who successfully meet the strict standards will join their ranks at a later date. Hyen's voice turns incredibly grave as he issues a final warning, telling them that the very moment they arrive in Shangxi, no, the exact moment they step foot outside the gates of this alliance, they are officially representing the entire Orthodox Murim alliance, shouting at them to never dare forget that sacred duty. Hyen turns his gaze directly toward Yonho, only to find the boy completely ignoring the epic speech, nonchalantly cleaning out his ear with his pinky finger as if he couldn't care less. Strung tight with stress, Hyen practically begs him to please just be on his best behavior and stay out of trouble. Nearby, Chance bids a formal farewell to Gong Mujin, who earnestly requests that the alliance leader take exceptional care of Yonho until they safely reach Manhwa. Chance tells him not to worry about a thing. However, as Gong Mujin watches Yonho walk away, he muses privately to himself. He thinks about how fortunate it is that the prestigious Mount Hua sect is hosting the martial arts competition, but realizes that as long as a terrifying monster like Yonho is participating, the rival teams stand absolutely zero chance of winning, feeling a wave of pity for the poor elders of the other sections. Meanwhile, a bald master who has been tasked with accompanying the youth group throws a massive tantrum. He corners the general strategist, whining loudly about why he has to be the one to go, desperately protesting that he has absolutely zero control over a wild card like Yonho. Hyen coldly dismisses his complaints, telling him that managing the youth is technically a fundamental part of his job description, ordering him to just shut up and start moving. Right at that chaotic departure moment, Daeyeon rolls up in an elegant carriage pulled by two powerful horses, accompanied by Muzin. Yonho struts over to the vehicle, flanked by a completely bewildered Chance and Hyen, who stare at the luxury setup and ask what on earth this is supposed to be. Yonho proudly gestures to the vehicle, declaring it his personal carriage because he has absolutely no intention of riding a horse all the way there. He then turns a sharp smirk directly toward Hyen, stating that he knows perfectly well that the general strategist was the secret mastermind behind forcing him into this entire martial arts competition. He tells him not to sweat it, promising that he will return victorious with excellent news. However, Yonho adds a sudden condition, instructing the strategist to make absolutely sure he keeps Yonho's personal business running smoothly while he is gone, casually revealing that he already wrote a giant message on the business banner stating that Hyen will be completely in charge of operations for the time being. The sheer stress hits Hyen like a physical blow, and his stomach instantly begins to violently churn. Unbothered by the chaos he just caused, Yonho cheerfully gestures for his parents to climb inside the luxury carriage with him. Chance notices his strategist turning pale and asks Hyen if something is wrong. Hyen clutches his midsection, groaning out that his stomach just suddenly hurts a bit. As he watches the carriage roll away, he raises a silent, desperate prayer to the heavens, begging Yonho to please just avoid causing any catastrophic trouble on the road. Inside the moving carriage, Yonho slumps back and whines at the top of his lungs, groaning about how much he absolutely does not want to go to this stupid tournament. Instantly, a sharp rock flies through the air and smacks him squarely on the cheek. His sister glares at him, snapping that he could at least try to pretend to be cheerful for once in his life. Rubbing his sore face in disbelief, Yonho complains internally, wondering if his harmless whining was truly offensive enough to warrant having a literal rock hurled straight at his face. Finally, suppressing his complaints and sucking up his pride, he lets out a forced, dramatic battle cry, shouting for them to set off toward the grand martial competition. And just like that, a wild, chaotic, and completely unpredictable new adventure officially begins for the lazy genius. The group continues to press onward toward their destination, with Yonho perched atop the carriage alongside Seolwa and Jin Yeren. One of the girls participating in the tournament spies the unusual assembly. She mutters to herself, wondering what kind of combination this is. It is one thing for Sang Guanhong, Ian Hyo, and Wai Su Ryan to travel together, she thinks, but why are the Sword of Justice and his wife with them? Inside the carriage, Yonho's mother turns to her husband and asks why they are not sitting together. He replies that it has been a long time since he rode a horse. The observing girl wonders to herself if they came because of the demon-destroying sword, Sanho, Yonho's brother. Watching him, she concludes that regardless, their aura is on another level, as expected from the best under heaven of the new generation. The leader of the beggar sect approaches Sanho, whining about why he too had to come. Someone like him will end up dying if they enter a tournament like this, he complains. Sanho snaps at him to shut up, telling Jang Il to stop whining, reminding him that he is one of the wind feet of the Beggars Guild. The girl turns her gaze back to Yonho, admitting that his group is the one she understands the least. Yonho, sipping tea, remarks on its bitterness. The girl practically yells internally, thinking that tea is supposed to be bitter, asking if he expected it to be sweet. Jin Yeren tries to apologize, suggesting she might have made it too strong and saying she is sorry. Yonho curtly tells her to pay more attention next time. The girl, watching and hearing everything, thinks that if a lady like her served that tea, he should drink it as if it were nectar. Seolwa seizes the opportunity, offering Yonho a piece of candy instead of the bitter tea. He eats it, finding the sweet delicious. The observing girl is shocked by the level of attention he receives. She mentally pleads for them to stop, believing this man does not deserve such devotion. Jonghan, standing next to her, wonders aloud how something like this can happen. She replies that it must be because those young women are too innocent. He agrees, deciding he should go talk to them. She adds that as a woman, she cannot just stand by and watch a fellow like him deceive them like this. Gong Mujin observes the entire spectacle. He wonders if that enemy she mentioned earlier, whom she had asked him for money to fight, and which he gave, was actually a romantic rival. Deciding that since things have come to this, he must win regardless. Failure is not an option, neither in martial arts nor in matters of people. Suddenly, he pulls himself back. Wait, who exactly is he cheering for? If he wins, the one waiting for him will be Yonho. Lost in his thoughts, Gong Mujin notices something. A man appears before them, exclaiming that he is saved. The bald master, Muncho, seems to recognize him, asking if he isn't Du-guk. Ian and Yonho also appear to recognize him. The man calls out to his instructor, confirming that it is indeed him, Du-guk, a long time since they last met. This is Pang Du-guk, a former member of the Sleeping Dragon Pavilion class. Yonho mutters that this guy always gives him a bad feeling. Jin Yeren asks if he knows him. Yonho replies vaguely, saying only a little, but adding that rather than knowing him, the man is a trouble magnet. Muncho demands to know what he is doing here, asking why he isn't in Huashan and why he is coming from this direction. Du-guk is confused, saying this is the first time he has heard the name Huashan. Muncho questions if he was not at his family home. He explains he was carrying out a secret mission on direct orders from the counselor. Muncho realizes that is why he did not receive the news. Then he takes stock of Du-guk's bedraggled appearance, asking what state he is in. Du-guk, quite worried, warns his instructor that now is not the time, explaining he is being pursued. Muncho demands to know by whom. Du-guk is about to say the name when they appear directly behind him. Muncho recognizes them and gasps, asking if it cannot be the Green Forest. Yonho is furious, muttering that he knew it. This guy attracts the Green Forest like a magnet. Muncho tells Du-guk to listen, calling him an idiot and demanding an explanation for what is happening. Du-guk insists he cannot reveal everything here, citing a direct order from the counselor. He does disclose, however, that he was undercover investigating these subjects. Muncho retorts that apparently, the infiltration did not go very well. He admits they discovered who he was. Muncho sarcastically asks if he is proud of that. Jonghan steps forward, addressing the situation, a young man on direct orders from the counselor being pursued by the Green Forest. The boy is safe for now, he reasons, suggesting they not turn this into a larger problem, especially with so many travelers on the road. Wouldn't it be better to avoid bloodshed, he asks. Muncho asks if Jonghan is suggesting they just let these members of the dark sect pass. He questions if those rumors that they are toothless tigers were true. An annoyed Jonghan explains that it is nothing of the sort, pointing out that their enemies are numerous. If they start a fight without good reason, he worries the children might end up getting hurt. He reminds Muncho that their mission is to deliver these children safely to Huashan. Muncho realizes that is right, admitting Jonghan is correct. Jonghan tells Muncho to retract what he said about teeth. Muncho says he retracts it. Muncho then turns towards the Green Forest members. He demands they listen, stating that he does not know what happened, but from this moment forward, this young man is under the protection of the Murim Alliance. He warns them that if they do not want to become enemies of the Alliance, they should turn back. But they are not having it, and one of them demands they listen, asking since when did they become friends with the Alliance. Just looking at their faces makes them want to rip their necks out, he threatens. Muncho is surprised, wondering how they can react this way just hearing the name of the Alliance. Du-guk clarifies that these are no common subjects, explaining that he did not fail his mission for no reason. A confused Muncho considers that while Du-guk can be a bit unreliable, he did manage to be ranked among the 5 dragons, even if only in last place. He wonders if they really might not be common members of the Green Forest. Addressing them, he asks if they are not afraid of the Murim Alliance. They reply asking how could they not be, stating that the Alliance is terrifying. They assert they know this better than anyone. Yonho and the others find themselves surrounded on all sides. The Green Forest members sneer, inviting them to look around. If all of them die right here, they muse, who will ever discover that it was them? Jonghan yells at them, calling them damned fools and telling them they have crossed the line. He demands to know if they at least know who he is. Yonho wonders if his father's name will work, just like Grandpa Counselor said it would. Jean Yeren is confused, asking what he means by work. Yonho explains that Grandpa said his father's prestige is so great that merely stating his name is enough to make the people of the dark sect retreat. Jonghan hears Yonho's words. He thinks to himself, that the time has finally come to show his authority. He addresses the enemies, declaring that he is the sword of justice. Why Jonghan? If they know his name, he says, then they know his sword knows no mercy. He asserts he will not waste time talking. Since he is busy today, he will make an exception and give them a chance, clear the path, and turn back. Hearing his name, their faces twist into a malicious, terrifying expression. Both Jonghan and Muncho are taken aback, demanding to know what is wrong and what is this reaction. The leader of the enemies announces that his blood suddenly boiled, confirming that this is indeed the group of the Sword of Justice. He orders his men to kill them all, warning them not to let Wei Jonghan escape, emphasizing that they must kill him. Yonho remarks that his father's prestige did not help at all. In fact, it only made them even angrier. Jonghan comments on the Green Forest people, saying they hold far too much of a grudge. One of the enemies tells his leader that he did not know the Sword of Justice would be here, arguing that this cannot be resolved now and that they need permission from that thing. The leader replies that permission is denied. The other protests, saying but the leader cuts him off, stating it is an order from him. Even if they die here, they cannot disobey, the leader asserts. However, they also cannot let Wei Jonghan leave. He orders everyone to attack as if they have nothing left to lose. With that, they all hurl themselves against their targets. Jonghan mutters about these crazy people. Muncho yells to everyone that this is not training, but a real fight, urging them to fight for real. Thus begins the battle between the two factions. Their leader attacks Jonghan, bringing his sword down in a top-down assault. Jonghan sees it coming, declaring that the Green Forest has forgotten his sword. With lightning speed, Jonghan vanishes, only to reappear before him. Their two swords clash, but it is the enemy who gets the upper hand, making Jonghan retreat. Inwardly surprised, Jonghan asks himself what this is, wondering how a simple member of the Green Forest blocked a strike reinforced with his internal energy. Addressing all the others, he tells them that they are stronger than he imagined, warning them not to lower their guard and to consider them twice as strong as they appear. Yonho observes them, then climbs down from the roof of the carriage. His mother asks him what happened. Yonho reassures her that it was nothing, mother, telling her not to worry. Yonho approaches Muzin, casually commanding him to gather some stones. Utterly bewildered by such a bizarre request in the dead center of a chaotic battlefield, Muzin questions his own ears, asking if he seriously wants rocks right now amidst all this madness. Yonho doesn't argue. Instead, he offers a cold choice. Either pay up 300 coins on the spot, or go fetch the stones. Which will it be? Cursing under his breath, a defeated Muzin snaps that he will do it. Activating his golden immobile body technique for the sole, ridiculous purpose of gathering rocks, he swiftly scoops them up and delivers them to Yonho. Acknowledging the favor, Yonho instructs Muzin to stay close to Su Ryan and protect her, explaining that with someone like him acting as a shield, none of these enemies will ever manage to lay a finger on her. Caught off guard by the sudden responsibility, a surprised Muzin can only stammer out a hesitant agreement. With his ammunition secured, Yonho climbs back up to the roof of the carriage. Weighing a single stone in his hand, a sharp focus washes over his face as he mutters that it is finally time to begin. Zhonghan shouts to the group, warning them that the enemies are stronger than they look. He yells at them not to lower their guard and to fight as if their opponents are twice as powerful as they appear. The men of the Green Forest charge violently, catching Yonho's faction completely outnumbered. Du-guk finds himself facing 3 enemies closing in on him. Internally, he laments that his hands are numb and his vision is growing blurry, realizing he exhausted way too much internal energy while fleeing at full speed. The enemy mocks him, calling him an idiot and telling him to stop making that exhausted face. With terrifying speed, the foe lunges forward, aiming his sword directly at Du-guk's face. Du-guk watches the blade approach, thinking to himself that it is cursed and there is no way he can block it. But in that split second, a stone strikes the enemy squarely in the flank, saving Du-guk from certain death. The attacker crashes to the ground, leaving Du-guk completely stunned, unable to comprehend how he managed to survive. Meanwhile, more enemies rush in to strike him down, but every single one of them is knocked out cold by flying stones. Du-guk turns around to see his savior, only to find a furious Yonho standing there, calling him a trouble magnet. Shocked by his appearance, Du-guk stammers out his name, demanding to know what he is doing there. Yonho brushes the question aside, mentioning that his master used to say that the most terrifying enemy on a battlefield is neither the clever adversary nor the brave one, but rather the incompetent ally. Du-guk hesitantly responds, asking if that is true. Pointing a finger at him with utter disdain, Yonho adds that he thinks differently. From what he has seen, the most terrifying ally on a battlefield is a trouble magnet. An incompetent ally is merely useless, but they do not drag the entire enemy force behind them like he does. He demands an answer, asking if that is not true. As a tear rolls down Du-guk's cheek, he stammers an apology, thinking to himself that he should have just died at the tip of that sword. Suddenly, a voice shouts out to Yonho, calling him a bastard. It is his father, and Yonho casually responds, asking what is up. His father, struggling to deflect the enemy's swords, snaps at his son, asking what on earth he is doing. He asks if he cannot see the situation, demanding to know why he is hoarding his sword as if he wants to trade it for candy. He orders him to get down there right now and join the fight. Yonho replies that it is all a misunderstanding. He asks his father to imagine what would happen if he left his post, wondering if their mother would not be put in danger if an enemy slipped past. With a deadpan, serious expression, he questions if his father is suggesting he should just ignore their mother to fight alongside them. Internally, his father fumes, realizing the brat is saying this on purpose so Sang Ah can hear. He fires back, calling him a rascal and trying to clarify what he actually meant. Yonho cuts him off, stating that he is much more useful staying right where he is. His father barks back, asking what the hell he is talking about, but Yonho simply tells him to watch. Flicking his wrist, he sends a barrage of stones flying, perfectly striking 2 enemies who are currently battling his sister and another girl. His sister calls out her thanks, while the other girl, who had been speaking ill of him until recently, remains completely silent. Yonho boasts that he is providing the necessary cover from a vantage point with a privileged view, adding that a warrior of his father's caliber should surely understand that. His father curses to himself, thinking there is nothing to understand. All the brat needs to do is come down and swing his sword once to end everything, making him resolve to straighten out the kid's attitude the moment they arrive in Manhwa. He continues to fight, tossing one enemy away as the others begin to look at him with pure terror. Jonghan notes internally that the enemies are slowly retreating. He is curious to find out who they really are, since they definitely do not seem like ordinary bandits from the Green Forest. However, he acknowledges they are far too busy to ponder it right now, and he charges straight into the fray. Jean Yeren anxiously asks if everyone is all right and if anyone got hurt. Yonho reassures her not to worry, pointing out that even if it does not look like it, their combat power is enormous. Yet, internally, he finds it highly suspicious. With their current strength, they should have more than enough power to annihilate a medium-sized sect, yet they are practically at a standstill. On top of that, the enemies are only utilizing fundamental techniques, and yet they manage to maintain such a high level of combat proficiency. He stops himself, reasoning that overthinking is not his job and that his brother will figure out what is truly going on. The scene shifts to his brother, Sanho, who defeats an opponent by slashing him across the chest. Watching this, the leader of the beggar sect silently begs Sanho to take it easy, thinking that if the skill gap is this massive, no one will ever believe they belong to the same tier. Sanho eliminates 4 more enemies simultaneously with a flawless technique. He then charges his power, striking the ground with his sword, sending a shockwave that rips through multiple enemies, killing them instantly. He turns to the beggar sect leader, Jang Il, telling him that plenty of disciples are watching, asking if he plans to just keep standing there. Jang Il stammers out a weak excuse, saying he was not just playing around. Internally, though, he laments that this guy alone is making all of them look like a bunch of useless fools. The focus shifts to Guanhong, who is swinging his sword wildly while observing Sanho's fight. Someone asks if that is not Guanhong. Catching sight of him, Jang Il clicks his tongue internally, telling him he might as well give up. They used to say Guanhong was the strongest of the current generation, but compared to Sanho, he is nothing more than a frog at the bottom of a well. Jang Il then glances toward Ian and his friend. Looking at them, he observes that those two actually seem stronger. Rumors claim they were a level below Sang Guanhong, but the reality unfolding before his eyes shows the exact opposite. The enemy forces completely surround Ian and his companion. One assailant lunges forward with a strike aimed directly at Ian's head, but Ian effortlessly ducks. He wonders what is going on, noting how incredibly slow the attack feels. They are clearly stronger than him on paper, yet he senses absolutely no threat from them as he smoothly dodges every single one of their blows. Finding themselves back to back, Ian wonders if this sudden clarity is due to that training. He is referring to the grueling training session with Yonho, who had pelted them with stones using the exact technique passed down by his master. Jean Yeren begins to tremble with fear, realizing that this is what a real battle in the Murim looks like. Sensing her terror, Siwa places a reassuring hand on her shoulder, telling her not to be afraid because the Mount Hua sect stands right by her side. She promises to protect her if anything happens, earning a grateful thank you from Jean Yeren. Suddenly, one of the enemies roars, unleashing a sinister dark aura that catches even Sanho completely by surprise. Enshrouded in this dark energy, the foe screams that he will rip them all to shreds, vowing to make them regret ever leaving the martial arts pavilion. Before he can even finish his sentence, a hand pierces through his chest from behind, ripping his heart out. The dying man turns around in shock, realizing it is his own ally, gasping out a desperate question as to why he did it. The cold-blooded ally replies that he warned them not to use that power, casually crushing the life out of him while declaring that he has no need to keep disobedient dogs alive. Absolute shock grips everyone on the battlefield. Holding the bloody heart of his fallen comrade, the ruthless leader addresses the remaining troops, asking if anyone else intends to disobey orders. He challenges anyone afraid of dying to step forward, promising to end that fear for good. He crushes the heart to pieces and commands them all to kill everyone or die trying, making it clear that none of them will leave this place alive. With that chilling command, the entire enemy force throws themselves wildly at Yonho and his allies. One of the attackers targets Jonghan, executing a heavy downward strike. Jonghan smoothly sidesteps the blow and drives his blade deep into the enemy's shoulder. The enemy hesitates for only a split second before pushing forward right against Jonghan's embedded sword, seemingly completely numb to the pain. Astonished by this suicidal recklessness, Jonghan delivers a powerful kick to send him flying. Internally, he notes that they are advancing with zero regard for their own lives, realizing that an opponent who does not fear death is incredibly dangerous. He screams a warning to the rest of the group, telling them that these people are not normal and ordering them to prioritize their own survival above all else from this moment on. As the enemies rush forward once more, Yonho finally steps up, telling everyone to hold on a moment. Unleashing his immense power, he stands directly in front of the advancing horde with his sword drawn. He casually remarks that he wanted to keep just watching from afar, noting that as an instructor, he did not want to rob the students of a valuable chance to gain combat experience. He channels his raw energy into the blade, declaring that things have officially gone too far. With a cold gaze, he tells the enemies that he is going to cut them down now, asking if they have any objections.